All right, welcome everyone. We're going to get the meeting started tonight. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to call this January 20th meeting to order. If the clerk will please call the roll.
Councilmember Amy Lamb.
Here.
Councilmember Roshino Farrell. Here. Mayor Josh Amato.
Here.
Councilmember Kent Treen.
Present.
Councilmember Michael Boyer.
Here.
Councilmember Pamela Stewart.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Debbie Treen.
Here.
All right, thank you. And Councilmember Lamb, will you please lead us in the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor, will you please read the land acknowledgement?
Yes, our land acknowledgement is a statement we read to recognize Indigenous peoples who are the original stewards of the lands on which we now live, work, and recreate. The city's a proud partner of the Snoqualmie tribe, and we feel it's important to recognize the history and connection tribes have always had to these lands. Therefore, I now read the statement. We acknowledge that we are on the indigenous land of Coast Salish peoples who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. Don't make me pronounce it the Indian way. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial.
Thank you very much. Up next, we have approval of the agenda. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions to the agenda? Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I would like to add an agenda item to new business to discuss how the council and city will provide information and respond to ongoing ICE efforts around our community.
Okay, we can do that directly. Let's see, after the consent calendar, we'll make that item 18. And then all the other agenda items will change to 19, 20, 21, and so on. And then Councilmember Treen. Sorry. Okay. And Deputy Mayor.
I'd like to move that we move the executive session to the end of the meeting to allow for the public to participate before we go into session.
Okay, so we'd be moving that to the
last item on the agenda.
Okay.
So I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
All right, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda passes. Okay, up next we have our public comment. Do we have anybody signed in? Okay, I'm going to ask that as you come up to give your public comment that you state your name and the city that you reside in. And I'm going to ask the audience, please, if you agree with what they're saying, to not clap or cheer so that we can be respectful of people who might have a different viewpoint. Thank you very much. And up first, I am going to call up Doug Hadley, followed by Paula Harper Christensen. And you will see that light turn red or yellow once you're losing time, and up there, and then red, and then I'm going to have you finish your thought, and then I'll call you off. All right, you can begin whenever you're ready.
All right, my name is Doug Hadley. Okay. My name is Doug Hadley. I'm the treasurer of Sammamish Hills Lutheran Church, which is your neighbor right across the street. And I'm here today with one of our council members, church council members, Shelley Holmes. Okay, so as with most mainline churches today, we have seen declining membership and as a result, declining financial resources to support the mission of the church. In 2024, the Church Council of Sammamish Hills decided to sell some of its property in order to establish an endowment fund to help with our financial challenges. Sammamish Hills has about 1.2 acres of property, which is surplus to our needs. That, combined with a neighboring property, which will be joining us in the sale, results in about 2 acres being available for sale. However, the property is currently zoned TCE, which only allows for single-family home construction. Sammamish Hills, along with our realtor, Steve Plur, has been working with the city since mid-2024 to get improved zoning from TCE to something that would allow multifamily housing. During our meetings in 2024, the city admitted that the existing town center codes are confusing, difficult to administer, and relies too much on reviewer discretion. Our understanding was that the city was going to make changes to the zoning process and the zoning itself. We expected to see a change in the TCE zoning in 2025 to something more accommodating to us in order to sell our property as a TCC zone property. Obviously, that did not happen, and now we have a new city council with potentially a new direction that they want to take the zoning process. So the purpose of us being here today is we have attended multiple meetings with the city, property developers, and members of our congregation, and we have taken time and money to get dangerous trees removed and get the property safe for development. The updated zoning will be the last thing we need to put the property on the market. We want to encourage the city to continue with making changes to the zoning within the town center development in accordance with the plans developed in 2024 and 25. Allowing Sammamish Hills to sell a portion of its excess real estate to a multifamily developer would benefit the city by providing more reasonably priced housing and would also increase the tax basis for this piece of property. So my question to you is, what can we do to help move this along? So, thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we have Paula Harper Christensen.
Guess it doesn't, oh, there it moves. Greetings, City Council. My name's Paula Harper Christensen, Sammamish resident for 39 years. I appreciate this opportunity to speak with you tonight. Sammamish needs a plan. I'm calling upon our elected leaders, city staff, and our residents to protect our immigrant families when federal enforcement agencies, ICE and CBP, expand into our beautifully diverse city. Last week, ICE agents were busy in Redmond, Bellevue, and Issaquah. Injustice happens when racism gets a budget. Some cities are now offering classes to learn and to train for the day when armed masked men in unmarked cars pull into daycare, schools, places of worship, hospitals, and libraries. ICE follows no rules. Some cities now have a budget offering financial services for families who have suffered the trauma of a disappeared loved one. We must be proactive. We need a plan that thoughtfully addresses our fears and outlines ways we can help and protect our neighbors, children, and residents, regardless of their immigration status. This is our moral and spiritual crisis. The moment we all wondered what we would have done if we lived in Berlin in 1939. We must be prepared so we can act responsibly to protect our residents. I'm a child development specialist and a trained victim advocate. We know the grave impact on our children's health and wellness when children are afraid to go to school for fear their parents will be disappeared when they get home. This level of trauma, known as adverse childhood experiences, or ACE, can change a child's biological systems that not only last a lifetime, but it's also generational. What's the plan? We are a city that prides itself on proclamations. Now we need more, and our response needs to be rapid and loud. So that tonight I've brought whistle kits for all of you so that you can be prepared. I don't leave home without my whistle. So we can be prepared to make some noise when the ICE comes into our community. We are blessed to be surrounded by our immigrant neighbors. No one is safe when large men with no identification carrying guns roam
Thank
our
you.
streets and our parking lots. Let's organize and strategize. What's the plan?
Thank you. Up next, we have Mary Wichter, followed by Paul Stickney.
Good evening, Council. My name is Mary Wichter. I've lived in Sammamish 25 years. For your first meeting on January 6th, I had spoken on a few things that I'd seen a lot of complaints on the My Sammamish See-Click Fix Act, which is great to use, and thanks for everyone that uses it for reporting problems to the city. I had spoken on handicap spots and the EV charging parking slots, mostly by the YMCA, but also other places that people just, I think they're using them or abusing them and not realizing it. And so my suggestion had been that the city could provide some more communication to help be able to address that. And we're not going to go over those rules today, because today I want to talk about safety and fire hydrant access anywhere in the city. Whenever you build, there's fire accesses and fire codes that have to be met. You need fire access, and everybody needs to have access to the fire hydrant in the case that there is a fire that would come. If that fire hydrant is blocked, safety is sacrificed. Everyone in the community who's an owner pays taxes to fire and schools and emergency services and police. There should be no place in the city that a fire hydrant is blocked. I spoke with police traffic officer today and also the EF&R people at Station 83, and I talked with them about the concerns and what they have to deal with. And it came across that it actually is pretty tricky to figure out which fire hydrants count and is the fire lane designation there or not. And my claim is that clarity is missing. We need a solution. We don't want to lose special time or really precious time when there's a fire, or if there's an emergency situation where someone has a stroke or a real emergency. And if people are parked by fire hydrants anywhere in the city on public or private roads, it hampers our ability to respond. The Washington state rule is there is to be no vehicles parked anywhere within 15 feet. There's Washington law for it. I believe there's some RCWs for it, and I listed 132 and 156,550 today, but there's other ones. So I also went to the city of Issaquah and spoke there with a police officer who's also a traffic officer, and he is friends actually with the one in Sammamish. And he said that Issaquah had fixed the problem by having a special code that allows them, it gives them clear access to be able to ticket and, if needed, tow. And because of that, there is clarity and it's a lot more straightforward. So you can't have cars or vehicles, but I'd like to see no obstructions. So anyway, I gave you information in my email that I sent right at 5. Sorry I didn't get it done before, but I was talking with parties all day long. And I just think that fire access is important to everybody. You don't want your house caught on fire because the people next door couldn't get the fire hydrant. And people that live by fire hydrants, a lot of them aren't signed or have fire lanes marked. So I think we can just have an open thing. And I think it's a pretty simple code change. And I would suggest that our city consider looking into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Stickney.
Good evening, City Council. Paul Stickney, Sammamish. Have been involved since '99, lived here full-time since 2013. It's time to elevate our Thrive across the board. And elevating Thrive is done by alleviating citywide housing imbalance, as I have discussed. take a look at some comments back, well, they go back a long way, but some of the more recent comments, I've sort of broken through a glass ceiling and have seen some things that I've never seen before clearly. If you take a look at the comments to City Council on December 2nd, Planning Commission on December 4th, and then the comments to Council on January 6th and on the 13th, they all support this page that I'm talking about here. This page here, by the way, has a list of the prior 4 City Council retreats in 2022, 23, 24, 25, retreat materials, links to the video and all the public comment. You have a lot on your agenda today. I didn't send this early. This is more for you to consider after tonight's meeting. There's a lot here. I sent a copy of this document to the city clerk so they can forward it to you with all the links that are very handy. But I'm going to read the top of this. These materials in those meetings and what's listed in these links and the prior retreats and those past 4 meetings are comments and video links, policy, numbers, guidance in support of shifting housing policy from TH to HST. TH is what our city has done forever. Transportation first and external growth second. Time to change that for housing first, not in favor of everything else. We've done a great job with virtually everything else in the city, but our housing imbalance, we have not. And it's time to plan for both internal needs and external needs, which is a large H, and then get services on a citywide scale based on those decisions, and then transportation, which more likely than not will go down based on those land use changes, but if not, we have the funds to pay for it. Utilize, enrich, sustain, and stay as policy guidance, quantify market rate, citywide housing shortage need factors, add about 5,000 market rate units on a citywide scale to build alongside the 2,100 affordable, which will have less impact than 1/3 of the growth we've seen in Sammamish since incorporation. It's time to round out housing supply based on actual need, not on regional metrics.
Thank you.
Appreciate the chance to speak. Thank you.
Anyone not signed up who would like to give public comment? Okay, do we have anyone online?
No online public comment.
All right, with that, we'll move on to our consent calendar. Did everyone have a chance to review the consent calendar, and is there anything anyone would like to pull for discussion? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Second?
We've moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We now have our, this is a conversation on the city's response to ICE, and I'm going to ask Councilmember Stewart if you could please lead us off in this conversation.
Thank you so much, Mayor, and really appreciate the conversation we had about this yesterday. Back in early January, I had the opportunity to attend a meeting with Eastside for All, and there were a number of community groups and community leaders there to talk about how we can work together to best still make sure that we are law-abiding citizens, but that we protect our community and that we protect our residents and that we make sure that even law enforcement is following the law. So there are a number of things that we as a city can do. The first one is probably the easiest, and that is for us to put out a statement to reaffirm our commitment to the residents of our community and to their safety and to making sure that they are not mistreated and that their rights and their constitutional rights are upheld. So our commitment to our immigrant community. And that's not just putting out a one-time statement, but being able to make sure that we maybe put up signs in City Hall, that we put out information on our website, put out information on social media. Maybe, and this would be staff's discretion, but even include something in our monthly newsletter. The other thing is to make sure that we have written protocols for government staff, so that we make sure, working with our legal counsel, that everyone understands what their rights are, right? And that we understand that ICE agents cannot enter non-public areas without a signed judicial warrant, and to make sure that everyone knows the difference between the different types of warrants and they can identify a judicial warrant. So, for example, the back areas are not open to the public without a judicial warrant. ICE can't come back there, so that all of our staff understand and they feel safe and we have a safe working environment. We can also share that same information with our local businesses if they so choose. And there's some simple information that we can share out with our local businesses that they can post that says, hey, you're not allowed in private areas, so that their workers feel safe. Because we know that it is not just undocumented immigrants who are being picked up. And so everyone should be able to feel safe going to work, going to school, wherever they would like to go. And then providing information about knowing our rights. So again, not putting out anything controversial, but just putting out information so that everyone knows their rights. And that's where I think we can really work with some of our local community organizations to partner with, especially those that are already working in other communities and can translate this information into whatever languages are needed. So I think those are some really big ones. There's another one that I'm not sure if we could get consensus on, but there is a bill that's been introduced in the state Senate, Senate Bill 5855, that would say, that basically says that law enforcement officers cannot be masked except in certain, obviously situations for safety, and that they must have identifiable information so that people know that they truly are law enforcement agents. And again, to understand what ICE can and can't do. So as I was discussing with the mayor last night, if masked men with no identifiable law enforcement identification knocked down my door, I would call 911. So that's where we had a conversation that said we should also sit down and talk with the police chief and ask them to put out information, for one, to let the community know that when you call 911, you are not calling the immigration enforcement, you're not calling CPB, you're calling our local law enforcement. People should feel safe calling our local law enforcement. If you have an emergency, you can call our local law enforcement. They will come, they will help you. Their job is to protect you, not to enforce federal laws. And we already have a resolution that we passed, was it last April, that said no city resources will be used to assist with those activities. So we want people to know our communities are safer when people feel safe calling for help. And then to also make sure that we understand what our local police can do if you feel that your rights are being violated, and can they intervene or can they not. And I think it's really important, as Mary was talking about having clarity, I think it's really important in these times that people are very clear on what their rights are, that they're very clear on who can help. There is also information about how if you witness something, what you can and can't do, and what your rights are as a bystander, so that we make sure that we are all following the law, that we are not intervening in ways that we shouldn't, but that we are doing everything we can to protect our neighbors and our loved ones and our community. So I did share some information with the mayor, and we can get copies of those out to everyone. I wasn't able to make multiple copies. I wasn't that advanced on the copier this evening. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councilmember Stewart, for walking us through what you're thinking there. And I've got the paper in front of me. I'm sorry everyone doesn't. I generally am supportive of a lot of the things that are on this document. We are not necessarily looking to create new information. We're looking to be able to compile a lot of this information that already exists from a lot of partners who are experts in this area, and give our residents an easy to find location to to source for residents who might need this support. So I guess what I would like to do is give other council members a chance to speak to this if they have any thoughts, so that we can, if the council does decide to take action, we can have a well-rounded proposal that fits the views of the body. So, Councilmember O'Farrell.
I just want to say I'm fully supportive of this. As somebody who's come from another country, fully supportive of doing what we can as a city to inform our residents. Sometimes we use the word citizen when we talk about the public, and I think we also need to be careful when we need to use the word resident, because all of our residents belong to Sammamish. They pay taxes in Sammamish. They're educated in Sammamish. They recreate in Sammamish. And so anything that we can do to inform all of us, because as was said, it's not just undocumented that we have seen in the media that have been targeted and sometimes wrongfully targeted and then are just kind of dumped out on the street with no explanation. So I think as well-informed public as we can be, and I think that's all to the good. So I fully support this. Yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you. I want to thank Paula for coming out and giving public comment on this, and for Pam for taking the lead on this. We did probably not enough, last year when some of these issues were surfacing. And I've been following some of the social media commentary, and it's obvious we need to do much more. We need to make sure all our residents have the information that they need to feel safe. I think, we read like little bits of information here and there, but it needs to be like pretty comprehensive from our city in terms of where we stand and what people can do to protect themselves. We are, as a city, 35% people of color. So, and I wrote this in social media, if anybody thinks that that they're safe, like, we don't know. We are 35%, people of color, and of those, in last year in 2025, 32 people died in ICE custody, and 6 of them were Asian. So to me, that hits close to home. And like Pam, I have seen the videos. I have read so much in the media about what's happening. And to be honest, I would not know what to do. I understand people flee, and I simply probably would do the same thing. So I think it's really important that people have the information, and when you have the information, you can be a little less afraid. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. It's pretty clear from watching what's going on in Minneapolis that this is an extremely dangerous time for residents everywhere. And I also believe that because Washington State is a sanctuary state and we have sanctuary cities, we are likely to be the next target, if not the next one after that. So I do also support taking whatever action we can to reassure our residents that that our city will be protecting them to the extent it is possible, and I support whatever action we're going to take. We didn't know a year ago that things were going to escalate the way they are now. So I support taking action now.
Okay, Councilmember Treen.
Thank you, Mayor. City statement would be appreciated. I think within that city statement, there should be at least 3 clear statements within, or 3 parts to that. I think in 3s because it makes it simple for the public to comprehend it and actually be able to act upon it. So safety first. That should be the number one thing we need to talk about. What does that mean in this instance? And so that would definitely be number one. The second is that the city is here. We support the community, specifically the immigrant community. The third point, and I really liked what Councilmember O'Farrell said, that the third point is that we care for and the protection for all residents. And so when I wrote this down, I actually capitalized all those letters of residents just to make sure that it's the residents of Sammamish that I'm talking about when we say that we care for and that protection piece for it. I also agree that it should be in multiple languages, so that, and maybe even different dialects too, because if you just put it in Spanish, there are other dialects in there. And then as a side note, I'll just let you know, because I spent a little bit of time today talking with my students, and 50% of my population or 50% of the population of students that are in the program that I work in are Hispanic or Latino, Latinx, Latina. And we had a conversation today about what are you experiencing? What is your life like? What's going on with you personally and as a community? And so Bellevue clearly has a challenge that's going on because of ICE being in the presence of the city. And so so my point here is that the school district has done training already. Well, at least the Bellevue School District has done training, and I've been a part of that, because I hold down one whole corner of the school for safety. And so the whole idea here is, I think we go to our school districts. I believe they've actually done training. They know who can and cannot enter the building. We now have in most, I think it's actually all Bellevue schools are in a lock situation except for entrance into the main office. And that's all of them for safety reasons. 4 years ago, 3 years ago, that wasn't the way we operated. So they've made changes, and maybe the city needs to look at making those same kind of changes, but also the knowledge is there from the school districts here that serve our residents. So that's where I would look to for some help on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on this? Okay, I'll just say that there's a lot of moving parts to get information like this up on the website, to get a statement from 7 members of a council put together. And what can happen is we can end up trying to make a perfect product instead of a quick product that does the job. And so I think what we need to focus on is phasing this in a way where we can get a minimally viable product up on our website that is good enough to start, followed by refining it and making it exactly what we need it to be. Because there's a lot of things we can do, but we can't do it all quickly. And I would support having the staff help us determine what they can do now, like, tomorrow, the next day, what have you, versus what we need to wait a week on in order to get out. And I know all council members very likely have opinions they would like to make sure the public knows, but as we're trying to speak from one voice here, that's going to take time to synthesize. So that's the only statement I have on this right now, and I'd like to pass it back off to Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. You had potentially recommended last night that if we wanted to, we could try to form an ad hoc subcommittee to try to help pull this together. So I don't know if people are interested in that. And I do want to provide a little information for anyone who might be listening, because there have been some interesting conversations on social media. And if I may, I'd like to speak directly to those in our audience. I want y'all to know that you are safe and you are welcome here. We talked about it earlier that kids make up over half of our population, and both the Lake Washington and Issaquah school districts are 60% minority students. So we already have a majority minority in both of our school districts. So you are the community. We shouldn't be talking about, welcoming you to our community. You are the community, and we're just glad you let us stay. So I just want people to know that it's really important that you are safe, and that if you need help, you can call 911, and you can reach out to the city, and we'll do what we can for you. I also want people to know that this is from the Cato Institute, so in case anyone's curious, it tends to be a rather conservative-leaning institute. They put out stats that nearly 73% of the people who have been picked up by ICE have no criminal convictions. Nearly half don't even have any, half of those don't even have any pending charges. Only 8% had any violent or property criminal convictions. So the notion that all of this that's going on is for our safety and how they're handling that, I personally, and I can only speak for myself, I don't believe that, and that's why we are taking action. It's not that we are against law enforcement, it's that our number one job is community safety and public safety, and what's going on right now is not making communities safer and not making people safer. So if anybody wants any information, reach out to me, I'm happy to share. But I'm also happy to share all this information with staff, and if there's anything else we can do to help get this up and running, I think it's really critical, because we did already have last year a couple who was going through the immigration process. They were at immigration court. They came out of immigration court with a signed stay from the judge, and they were taken into custody and deported by ICE, and they were residents of our community, and they were doing everything right. So we really do need to protect everyone. Thanks.
Mr. City Manager, if you wanted to weigh in on your thoughts here.
Be happy to, Mayor. Thank you. We are happy to go in a couple of directions. Like Councilmember Stewart pointed out, you could have a subgroup that works together to bring something back to the full council for consideration, or we could take a crack from the staff level based on what we've heard tonight about coming up with something for you all to review. In the meantime, we do have some resources on our website that we've had up for a while. We're going to try to refresh that and bring that more to the front to get to the point of what can we do with immediacy, and then work on some of these other pieces and try to build as we go, recognizing and hearing from council the need to get something out there as soon as possible. So that is again, we can either do a subcommittee version of this, or we can bring something back. We can take a run at drafting, and I would leave that to the council to give us some direction on how you want to proceed on that.
Thinking of capacity, what would you prefer for the team?
A fair question, Mayor. I think in times like this, I will say that I default to council members' interest in doing something like this, in part because this is really, these are statements by you all as elected officials, and if that's really important, I think that's one where we would, we'd make time and figure it out.
Okay. If no one has a proposal, I do have something to offer. What I would like to see is for our city staff to pull the resources together that they have in a coherent fashion on a single page, making it very easy for residents to find it, perhaps utilizing the alert bar or something on the front page. And also look at the additional resources that were emailed to you just this morning, I think, to see what would easily work for the city that is defensible for us to put up. And then I think forming an ad hoc committee of 3 council members to come up with a draft statement and try to synthesize what everyone is trying to say so that we can all speak as one voice would be useful. But the ad hoc committee would simply be to get this statement up and out, not for necessarily operating as your mouse for the purpose of the website. Okay, so that's my proposal. If anyone would like to move that. Councilmember Stewart.
Sure. I will make a motion that we form an ad hoc subcommittee, and I'm going to actually add to that one to very quickly, like in the next day or two, draft a draft statement, get it into staff so that they can help us refine that without violating any Open Public Meeting Act rules, and be able to land that, and also meet with the police chief to find out what the our police department can and is already doing, and what information he can share, and that we might want to help to echo there as well.
And information on the city website.
I thought they were doing that. And provide any additional information for you guys on the city website.
Okay, so there was a motion to form an ad hoc committee, develop a statement with support of staff, and to have a meeting with the police chief, and to also get information up on the city website. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and is there any discussion? Count. Okay, and, okay, so seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Mayor, if I may,
Opposed?
just super quickly.
Yes, I'm sorry.
It would be helpful if we knew who the committee members were before you actually vote on it.
Okay. Would anyone like to, I certainly would like to be on it, but is there anyone, okay, so I see Councilmember Stewart and Councilmember Lamb. Did I see you raise your hand? Did I see? Nope. Okay, I'm willing to step back if other council members would like to. Okay. All right, so it looks like it'll be Councilmember Lamb, Stewart, and myself. Okay, and we'll try this again. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Councilmember Stewart, for all the work you put into that. Up next, we have a proclamation, Holocaust Remembrance Day. If Councilmember Boyer, if you would mind reading that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. International Holocaust Remembrance Day. Whereas the Holocaust was the state-sponsored systematic persecution and annihilation of European Jewry by Nazi Germany and its collaborators between 1933 and 1945. Jews were the primary victims. 6 million Jews were murdered. Roma, people with disabilities, and Poles were also targeted for destruction or discrimination for racial, ethnic, or national reasons. Millions more, including gay men, Jehovah's Witnesses, Soviet prisoners of wars, and political dissidents, also suffered grievous oppression and death under Nazi tyranny. And whereas the history of the Holocaust offers an opportunity to reflect on the moral responsibilities of individuals, societies, and governments. And whereas we should always remember the terrible events of the Holocaust and remain vigilant against hatred, persecution, and tyranny. And whereas the days of remembrance have been set aside for the people of Sammamish to remember the victims of the Holocaust, as well as to reflect on the need for respect of all peoples. Now, therefore, in recognition of the importance of never forgetting, I, Mayor Josh Amato, as mayor of the city of Sammamish, hereby proclaim January 27th, 2026 as International Holocaust Remembrance Day. In honor of the victims of the Holocaust and in honor of the survivors, as well as the rescuers, liberators, and further proclaim that we should work to promote human dignity and confront hate wherever and whenever and wherever it occurs, and for your signature, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Boyer. Okay, we are going to move to item number 20, which is a financial update. Our Vicki Carlson will be giving the presentation.
Good evening. For the record, Vicki Carlson, Finance Director. We're just getting the PowerPoint presentation set up right now. This will be a short update. This focuses on the general fund, and this is through September of last year. I'm still getting used to saying 2026 is the current year as opposed to 25 being the current year, so I apologize if I slip up that one. So just a couple of reminders. So first of all, this is an interim report. We are planning to do enhancements over the next couple of years. And I am very excited to say that as of late last week, we did go live with our new accounting system. So we are starting working on the first enhancement that you will see not in 2025 reporting, but when you get the first quarter 2026 report for the first 2026 data, you will start to see encumbrances show up. So right now, when you see these reports, you only see what we've actually spent against the budget. And it's very important as a contract city to be able to show what our contractual obligations are. So starting in 2026, you will start to see those obligations show up in the reports. We do have a lot of contracts, and so it's going to take us some time to get them in the system, but we officially started that work late last week. So by the time you get first quarter, you should see the first of many improvements in these reports. Just a couple other things to point out as you're looking through these reports. We do have a lag in sales tax and other state tax revenue that's received. We do earn it in 1 month and we receive it 2 months later. So as an example, revenue that's earned in January, we don't receive from the state until 2 months later, so the end of March. And then also, because we don't have spend plans in place yet, that is another improvement that will be coming in the future. You cannot simply take the budget and divide by 24 because we have 24 months, because some of our expenditures are cyclical. And unfortunately, that's not clearly represented in these reports yet, but they will be coming in future reports. And just a couple of examples here, audit costs, right? We do our audit in the summertime, so you won't see, as you're looking through our financial management report, the FMR, you won't see audit costs until summer show up. However, you will see our liability costs, which is a large bill, be paid in January or February. We pay 100% of that at that point in time. And the same goes for some of our revenues. Our revenues are very cyclical, right? Property taxes show up April, May, October, November. And going forward, so the report does compare January through September of 2024 to January through September of 2025. The report, because we don't have spend plans yet, does show the full biennial budget rather than trying to estimate how much would be spent through the first 9 months of the biennium. And just kind of the headline is, through September, revenues and expenditures are in line with what we expect. I mean, obviously individual lines may fluctuate, but in total, revenues are fairly close to what we would expect, and expenditures are tracking a little bit lower than we would expect as well. So getting into some of the details. So this is a summary of the general fund, again, through September of last year. The way this is laid out, it is meant to be very high level, but the top line shows total revenues, again, January through September of 2023, same time period for 2024, the biennial budget, and then actuals for 2025. That's the actuals through that time period. And you can see our revenues are a little bit less than 2024 actuals, and that is to be expected. We had a fairly big change in how we record our technology fees starting in 2025. In prior years, we used to report that in the general fund and then transfer it to the technology fund. So it overinflated revenues, overinflated expenditures. This pulls it straight out and puts it straight into the technology fund. So again, total revenues are tracking close to what we would expect. Same with expenditures. We have $39.9 million in expenditures through September of last year, as opposed to 37.1 million. And we do expect to see increases in the expenditures because we did have labor cost increases as well as inflation hit the rest of our contractual obligations, supplies, services, et cetera. I do want to unfortunately point out one mistake. Total capital transfers. The grand totals are correct, but one of our lines got stuck in the wrong category. So total capital transfers should be 3.375 million. And total expenditures line should be $40.4 million. So flip-flop one line, it was about $525,000-ish that ended up in the wrong line. But again, the budget column shows a beginning fund balance of $55 million with an ending fund balance of $40.1 million. That is the budgeted drawdown prior to the budget amendments that were approved by council late last year. Actuals through September show an ending fund balance of 47.8, which again shows a little bit of usage of the existing fund balance to get us through until property taxes show up. So just a few highlights on revenues that I'd like to call your attention to, and I've got a couple more other than what's on the slide. So again, property taxes, as a reminder, is 63% of our total budget. Property taxes, again, we receive April, May, October, November, and we do expect by the end of the year we'll be fairly close to budget. We're a little bit lower, we're about 69,000 lower than what we were last year, and that's primarily because we expected a little bit more in new construction showing up than what's actually been added to the records. Sales tax revenue also remains strong. We're about 412,000 higher than last year. The two big categories that are showing significant gains are the retail and services sectors. They continue to show strong results. It'll be interesting to see what sales tax does in 2026 because the state legislature did add sales tax to a number of service categories. So I don't think it's going to significantly impact our revenue sources, but it'll be interesting to see, at least from the services sector, how that changes over time. I also want to call attention to the building permit. Building permit revenue is continuing to be strong. It's about $478,000 over last year. Both the number of permits and the permit value is higher. The written report that's attached to the agenda bill has the details, but just for people so they can hear the numbers. So for third quarter of 2025, we had just under 4,100 permits issued. The prior year, it was 3,200 permits, and the permit valuation was $97.3 million compared to $60 million. So again, both the number and the value of permits was exceeding. Interest earnings lower than about $370,000 than the previous year. This was expected and baked into the budget. As we utilize fund balance to balance the budget, we have less to invest. We're also restricted in what we can invest in, so there just aren't a lot of high yield investment opportunities available to us. And then, again, as I mentioned before, tech fees are no longer being recorded in the general fund and then transferred out. They're being straight into the tech fund. One other thing I wanted to comment on that's not in, it's in the written report, but it's not in the slide, is I've been watching our franchise fees for cable. It is a little bit lower than last year. It's about $37,000 lower. It's not significant, but it does start to show a trend that as consumer behavior changes, our revenue sources change as well. We're going to be keeping an eye on that one because as people move away from your traditional cable services to streaming comes over through the internet and it is taxed differently. Internet is not taxed. So as people continue to cut that cord, we're going to see that revenue stream not go up, it's going to go down. So just a FYI on that one. On the expenditure side, just a few comments to point out here. The big one is on our salaries and benefits. Let me go back to my notes. There's my salaries and benefits. So total salaries and benefits is higher than last year. It's about $13.2 million, about $256,000 higher than last year. If all of our positions were filled, we would see that significantly higher, but we do have a number of vacancies throughout the city. Right now, we're trending about $800,000 above what we expected. When the budget was built, just for the benefit of the new council members, we did fully fund every authorized position, but we also added in a negative variance to account for vacancies that we know are going to happen through the course of the year. We had about an 8% estimate, and we're actually closer to 10 or 11%. So we do have about $800,000 through the end of September that was additional savings through those vacancies. Those savings were utilized through the budget amendment process last year. And just to kind of remind you, some of the things that we added to the budget that were not included when the budget was first approved was we didn't realize we were going to be owning Building 120. So we added some costs to do some studies there. We had a records management project to save money long term. We had some additional legal counsel that was required, as well as some code amendments. If you're interested in looking at the full details of the budget amendment, just for the record, it's attached to Agenda Bill 25-225 that was approved on November 18th, and that has all of the details of the budget amendments. A couple other things to point out is the East Side cost. East Side Fire is $8.3 million, which is about $1.9 million higher than last year. 15.2% increase in the contract from the prior year translates into $108,000 additional cost every month, plus increases in the contributions for facilities maintenance and equipment replacement. And then expenditures for the police and jail contract totaled $6.3 million. It does reflect a change in timing of when we receive the invoices from King County. We can't always control that. In 2025, we had 8 payments through September as opposed to 7 payments in September in 2024. Capital transfers, as I mentioned before, is actually $3.4 million. That is in line with what we would expect. Again, high-level comments on the general fund, and happy to answer any questions you have.
All right. I'll go in the order that people press their little buttons here. And up first, we have Councilmember Boyer.
Thanks, Vicki. Question for you. You may have answered this before, but I just want to make sure we have it correct. By going to your spend plan methodology and the system change we're making now, are we going to lose any visibility to prior trends?
No. So in the new system, we are mapping historical data into the new system so we can retain those trend analysis details. Right now, what we're doing is we're mapping back to 2021. So you'll have 2 full years in the prior biennium in addition to the current biennium. If we ever have staff capacity, we can map further back. But right now, the plan is 2021 going forward so we can keep that comparison going.
Great. And that was by whatever accounts or general ledger that was set up at the time, right?
Correct. And I will say, when you see the first report in 2024, 2026 data, you will see a different list of GL codes because we did take the opportunity to streamline the chart of accounts, make it a little bit more efficient, add some transparency into it. And as an example of just one account where we added transparency, if you look at the current FMRs, the financial management reports that come out every month, and you get the list of every single GL code, you'll see a GL code titled utilities. And in utilities, it has electricity, gas, everything in combined one. In the new system, you're going to see that broken out into each utility separately, so we'll be able to have more trend information. Now, unfortunately, going back and mapping the old transactions, we don't always have that detail. So you might see utilities in prior year, and going forward, you'll see the breakdown, but it's all going to be in the same category.
Yeah, you can't create more detail than was there before. So
exactly.
Great. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, Councilmember Stewart.
Okay, first, I just want to clarify for people that you're saying GL codes and not jail codes, because it sounds like jail codes.
I apologize for that. Yes, and I'm sorry. I am an accountant to the core, so sometimes these acronyms come out. So GL as opposed, which means general ledger, and it's the system we use to account for all of our transactions. Thank you for that.
No worries. It took me a minute. I was like, what? Oh, no, general ledger. Anyway, I also wanted to just add some color commentary. I know you talked about permit fees, that we had a higher number, and you stated the number. I just want everyone to know here on the dais as well as in the audience that that is not just permits for new home constructions. That is permits for everything. That's for your deck. That's for your sidewalk. That's for your fence. That's for your, I want to upgrade whatever, right? If you installed a new electric box. So when you hear that number 4,200, don't freak out. That is like every kind of permit that anybody needs. Probably includes tree permits as well. So I don't know, but that's where that number's coming from. And then to also add a little color commentary on the EFR part, I know that number 15.2% is huge. We talked about that a little bit before, that we had to do a little bit of making up. There's also the fact that we had to make up for unexpected inflation rates. So labor costs are the biggest costs for either police or fire, and really a huge part of the city operation costs as well, right? No one anticipated that we were going to have, I think the CPI that we had to use for, it was probably 24, was like 9.1%. And so that was not baked into prior budgets for EFR. So when we did this budget, part of that number was also having to not only make up for that, but once the salaries go up that much, they only go up from there. They don't go back down, right? So the labor costs did go up quite a bit. So I just wanted to share that for folks who didn't have that some of that context. And if you have more questions, Vicki and I spent a lot of time with EFR going through a lot of those details. But it was a big number. We also looked at trend analysis over police and fire over like the last 10 years, and they've gone up fairly equal. Just they tend to go up at different times. And I think the nice thing about our city is we tend to do a rolling average. The EFR labor agreement does not have a rolling average. So when you have a really high CPI number, that hits you all in that year. So it was a big hit.
Deputy Mayor.
Okay, I have to ask a stupid math question, okay? On your summary of the general fund, if you could pull that slide up. So I am confused about how your ending fund balance for 2023 actual isn't the beginning fund balance for 2024 actual.
That is a great question, and it's one of my frustrations with this report. It is January through the month reporting, so it's January through September. You won't see the ending fund balance be the beginning fund balance until we get to the full year reported. There is a better way of doing that, and we can do that in the new system.
I would have expected 23 and 24 to be the whole year, though. I get that that's the case now.
Yeah, it's because it's actuals reporting. We're not showing the budget.
Got it. And then same thing for the carryover to the beginning balance for 2025 then?
Yep, same
Okay.
thing. Correct.
Thank you.
Any other council member? Okay, so I just want to say the new system, we've had many conversations about it. I'm really looking forward to that. A lot of the questions I've been asking are going to be able to be answered now with that. We have a severely limited system at the moment. So I appreciate all the time and effort that you and your team are putting into getting that done. I think it's going to significantly increase transparency for the residents and actionable data for us up here. So thank you for all of that work. I know it's a lot. I did want to clarify on the savings that the salary savings that were then put into other projects. Was that banked savings, or did we project out the vacancy rate and then take that money and use it? Or are we only using money that we actually saved up to that point?
It was a combination of both. We knew we had hard savings through additional vacancies, and we did do some projections out because we knew those vacancies were going to continue for a while. Plus, we had some other changes in plans that helped fund it. So I want to go back and double check, but I believe all of the general fund adjustments came from savings elsewhere in the general fund.
Okay, and we still feel good about the projections that were used back when we spent the money that...
As of what we know today, yes. Nothing
Okay.
significant has changed to alter that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, up next we have item 21, which is a discussion of the contract award for Building 120 feasibility assessment and community use planning. We will have Rachel Bianchi, Angeli Meyer, and Janie Walzer giving a presentation. Scouts, thank you very much for coming and joining us today. We enjoyed speaking with you before the meeting, and we hope you visit us again soon.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Mr. City Manager. For the record, I'm Angeli Meyer, Director of Parks and Recreation, joined tonight by Rachel Bianchi, our Deputy City Manager, and Janie Walzer, Management Analyst for our department. We have for your consideration a contract with Opsis Architecture for a feasibility assessment and community use plan for Building 120. Before we get started with the presentation, I do want to remind everyone that last year, Building 120 was not on the work plan for the city, and so it wasn't in the 25-26 budget. And when the city found out that Central Washington was going to terminate the lease, we came to council and presented you with 3 options: to sell the building, to lease the building to another entity, or to come up with a transition plan for immediate use and come back at a later date with next steps for future planning, for long-term planning for the site. And that is what we are here to do tonight. And in the meantime, we continue to hear from the community. There are several interested parties that are asking to use the building. And we feel that a comprehensive feasibility plan will help council make an informed decision on what to do with the building. So with that brief introduction, I will turn it over to Janie, and we will be pausing the presentation for you to ask questions, but feel free to let us know if you want us to stop in between.
Okay, thank you. Hello, good evening, everybody. Yes, tonight we're providing an overview on the city-owned facility at 122 28th Avenue, so also known as Building 120. We're going to pause for questions both after the history of the building and the site, and then I'll tell you more about what we've done in the past 6 months, pause for questions, and then we'll go over what the scope of work is for the feasibility study that we brought to you. By way of background, the city purchased the building in 2015, but it was actually originally constructed in 2008. So the city bought it for just over $6 million. The building is about 31,000 square feet, and it sits on 2 different parcels of land that collectively are over 22 acres. It's also very encumbered by a wetland, so that's handy. The building itself has a gym with a stage, and then there's a kind of potential for a kitchen. You could put money into it and make it a commercial kitchen. There's 5 offices, 6 classrooms, and then 2 large open spaces. When the city bought this building in 2015, the council at that time had the goal of attracting a higher education partner to the plateau. So the city never intended to retain long-term ownership of the building. To that end, the lease with Central Washington University was structured as a lease to own. With each year, the rent would go up a little bit, depending on their performance, their revenues, and then hopefully encourage them to buy the property outright eventually. But due to financial constraints on the university side, they could no longer sustain that lease. And then the level of subsidy that they would need to stay is something that the city could not provide. So they decided to move out and terminate their lease as of June 30th, 2025. And then a quick zoning note, the site is zoned for residential use, so community or cultural center activity on the site is not permitted. Now, the university operated under a conditional use permit that was issued in 2017 when they moved in, but with their departure, the site has become non-conforming and can only continue to be used for 12 months. So they moved out on June 30th. That will expire June 30th of 2026. Now, to allow for use beyond that point, the community development staff has already docketed a rezone of the site, and they will be rezoning it to mixed-use city center. That was approved by council at the end of last year. That process is likely to be completed at the end of 2026, so still a ways to go. There is a potential for a near-term path in the city code that would allow for continued use beyond June 30th. And that would be taking the existing conditional use permit and kind of issuing a modified CUP along with it. Their CUP listed, quote, other secondary uses that support communities at large as possible activities. So while the university use is vacated, one potential approach would be to say that those secondary or subordinate uses remain, and therefore, since they remain, they can continue to be allowed on the site. But that just satisfies the zoning issue of the site. There's also building occupancy code that we have to consider. So any additional permit conditions tied to the range of activities or the intensity of use at the building, especially related to fire safety and accessibility, would still need to be satisfied before the building could continue to be used. So conceptually, this is just a bridge strategy, something that could help manage the property between July 1 and the point when council establishes a long-term primary use for the building. So pause for questions. Let me know if you have any.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I have a question. Isn't the building within the town center boundary, or it's outside the town center boundary? Okay, for some reason I thought it was part of the boundary, so that's why you need to do a docketed item to
It's like
rezone it
just
separately.
north of that line.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, go ahead. Thank
No
you.
other questions? Awesome. A note, in 2022, the city completed a facility condition assessment on all of its buildings. And at that time, $5 million in baseline maintenance needs were identified as needing to take place over a 15-year horizon. So I didn't change this for inflation. So $5 million is that 2022 cost. And we share this information just so that you're aware that the latest life cycle cost numbers we have on the building are somewhat outdated. They also are not inclusive of any costs that we expect to incur as we do a change of use at the building. When you do a change of use, you have to update the building to code. So if there's code adjustments that we need to comply with, this does not include those costs. But phase 1 of the feasibility study would provide us with those updated life cycle costs and also the cost of bringing a building up to code for new use. As Anjali mentioned, we brought this issue to council last year in May of 2025. So this slide summarizes what has been done at the facility since then. The primary focus of council at that time was just to keep activity in the building, so keeping the existing rentals going and no more until we had a longer-term plan in place. The city has done some basic turnover tasks that total $120,000. Excuse me. Those tasks include rekeying the building, installing a new building sign. We set up internet and utility billing at the site and also purchased some furniture that was needed in order to keep those rentals going. This number does not include any staff costs that have gone in to keeping this transition going. The annual operation cost, just for keeping the facility standing and the power on, everything working, is approximately $190,000. Those costs existed when the university was there because the city provided maintenance of the building, and they're going to continue existing as long as we own the building. Inclusive in this ongoing annual costs are custodial landscaping contracts, the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing maintenance, the maintenance of the HVAC system and the elevator. Also, utilities are about $60,000 a year for its current use of only being occupied about 12 hours a week. And then also some minimal staffing of that facility monitor time while those tenants are in there for tutoring. Also, in the past 6 months, we've evaluated the building for potential city uses. So one classroom was converted to record storage, and the cost of doing that was included in the transition cost I mentioned in bullet 1, and it eliminated the ongoing payments to off-site record storage. So that was a pretty big contract that we were able to eliminate. And then also, city internal service providers of police and fire have been able to use the building for some trainings that they needed more space for than what we had here at City Hall. Oops. And then those existing subleases that I mentioned that we have continued include the YMCA, which programs the gym. Microsoft has a lease of some stalls in the parking lot for their commuter program. There's 2 tutoring providers that are in there Wednesday afternoon and Saturday afternoon, so just 2 days a week. And then the university, Central Washington University, is leasing one of the classrooms upstairs for an in-person class that they have. So just those, 5 groups brings in about $170,000 a year. And that's not enough to cover all the annual costs, but it does offset some of those costs that we're incurring. Then the last note is that no additional uses have been added. The last direction we had from council was just to keep existing subtenants in the building. So all additional requests that we've gotten from the community have not been considered, as we don't currently have the council direction, nor do we have the staffing or the budget to staff the facility if more people were in there using the space. So I'll pause there again, since that's all we've done. All we've done is a lot, but if anyone has questions.
Councilmember Lamb.
Yeah, thank you. Are the subleases month to month?
They were written in 6-month terms, so it was June through December. And then we saw that the city was still going to have the opportunity to provide them. So there's a second term that is January through June. So
Okay.
2 6-month terms.
And in the event that we need to, I don't know, like do construction, their leases would obviously be modified, right? And that gives us the flexibility to do that with the 6 months.
Yeah, we also have it written in that if we need the building on certain days, we give them, I think, 14 days notice or something. Like, we're doing Lunar New Year on Saturday, and so we're asking the tutoring group to not be there. So.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Boyer.
Hey guys, thank you. Looking at the 120 and the 190K value, is the 120 just a transition and you're predicting that it would be ongoing of 190? Is that what those numbers mean?
Yes, so actually you can. The 190 is ongoing.
Yeah.
120 was an addition of what we,
It's what you ran into. Okay.
And they're one-time costs. We don't expect them to
Very good.
happen again.
And did the university contribute? You know, you're saying the $5 million prior. They were just tenants, right? They didn't do any TI, right?
When they first got the space, they did some amount of tenant improvements, but then the way the agreement was written up is all the major capital repair was on the city to do.
Nah, got it. And the 190 that you have versus 170, so 190 is not net, right? Your net is 20. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. Yes?
I think it's the opposite because our expenses are 190.
Yeah. Then and the negative. Right. I'm sorry.
I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. I would just also add that those 120 one-time costs, right? There are additional costs that would be needed if we, continue to use the facility.
Yeah, I think that was clear from the prior discussion. I just want to make sure that if the 190 was on net, I didn't want to misunderstand it. So it's a negative net 20. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. How much was the savings on the Iron Mountain contract when we canceled? Do we know?
I'll take that one. It really would depend on the year because it depends on how many boxes we would have to retrieve, but it's within the 40 to 50 range per year.
Great. And you mentioned that you are getting calls from people that want to use the building, but we're not allowing that right now. Are you tracking those so if we need them later, we've got them?
Yeah, we are.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. So I believe that our direction before, right, like we said, hey, let's keep the existing leases because we need, you guys, we all collectively needed time to do the assessment. So it wasn't like we just said, hey, just keep it and we don't know what to do. We were like, hey, you guys need to do a building assessment. We know that there are, depending on what we want to do, there could be some major changes, right? And so to look at those sort of short, medium, and long-term options, you guys said, hey, we're going to need to do an assessment. We're going to need to put some options together and come back to you. So just to clarify, it wasn't like we were like, we don't know what to do. We were like, let's keep those leases so we keep some revenue coming in because some of those costs were going to cost us even if nobody was there, right? We got to make sure, we sort of don't let it fall into decay. But we did want to be able to have time to do that full-on building assessment and really understand what's possible and how much it might cost because we can only imagine and we probably don't imagine as big as it is.
Councilmember O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make a comment about the record storage project that you guys have undertaken, and I'm not sure the public really understand. I certainly wouldn't if I'm not involved here. We have a room that you've taken over. It's filled with all of those banker boxes, and you said you even found box number 1 from when the city was founded back in 1999. Very exciting, I'm sure. And just to also point out the fact that we are saving 40 to 50,000 a year by not going to Iron Mountain, and that all these records then are going to be digitized. They're not going to stay in their current situation. We're going to digitize them, put them away, and make sure that they're for time immemorial, and then that room eventually will be freed up for other uses too. Am I right in saying that too?
That is our ultimate goal, absolutely. And I just want to give a shout out to the city clerk's office for taking this huge project on and doing it with gusto. So,
And what was the name of the project?
it's Project Elephant, one bite at a time.
Thank you.
So I'm going to harp on funds a lot, and I love the fact that we're saving money by not having records in Iron Mountain. But one of my concerns is that we now have records stored in an unsecured facility. So a frozen pipe or a fire could result in city records being lost. But I also get the need to save money. I am curious what the time horizon is on getting these files digitized, because every day they're in there, it's a liability that I think we need to be concerned about.
So it is a multi-year effort, Mayor, for us to get this done. So the first thing that we need to do is go through all of the boxes and see where we are in terms of the state has very clear rules about what needs to be retained, and then what can go to the archives, and then what can be legally destroyed. We need to do that entire process first. But before we do that, we need to get the clerk's office fully staffed. So. But it is a multi-year effort. I will also just say, though, that we are storing the records according to how the Washington State Archivist tells us to do it. So they're on racks, right? They're up above and that sort of thing. So we are doing industry standard what other cities all over are doing in terms of how we're storing our records.
I do appreciate that, and the fact that we don't have a fully staffed clerk's office, and it's a ton of work. I do get it. My mind just goes to, I'm in insurance, and so I hear all the time about the sprinkler pipe that burst and it destroyed a condo. So that's how I'm thinking about it, and that's the only reason I bring it up. As far as the building not being open to other people right now, to be able to rent one-off, I would like to understand a little bit more about, and you gave us a tour, so we kind of have an idea, but the need for employees to be there, why they need to be there for that building in particular. Is there a path of not needing to have them be there for some nonprofits who might be able to handle closing the building and the security element of that? And I'm curious, if we were to tell you in 2 months, we would like you to be able to open up a couple locations for some nonprofits who need space while the building's still vacant, what would that be possible for us to do?
That, in essence, is a liability for the city. If you have, so we are allowing that to some extent with the YMCA. They are a partner of the city, so it's slightly different. And they have the gym, and they enter and leave through separate entries and exits. But to have more than one, if it's any other group, if it's a tutoring group, we make sure we have city staff present. So if you end up with 2 different groups, I think you have a bigger problem, because then you have no oversight between 2 groups, and things happen. And there could end up being a lot of finger pointing. There's also, based on the age, there are minors in the building when there's tutoring, and I don't think it is appropriate then to have another nonprofit at the same time without staff oversight.
I think that's exactly the case, and in other places in other cities who do run public buildings, it is industry standard to have staff on site for those liability reasons. So everything from that broken pipe to even worse things that we don't really want to contemplate.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Boyer.
Yeah, sorry. One more question, because it made me think about the storage that we saw last week, which is great. And I'm sorry if I missed it last year. That task of digitizing is immense. You have to touch every single piece of paper and do something with it, right? Just about. Did you estimate the labor hours to do so?
The digitization part, we actually have not even budgeted for yet. That will be a part of our discussion here and as we come into the next biennium. But in previous places that I've worked, there are options here that we can do this, that we can, the staff can do the work to pull the boxes together and all of that, and then we can outsource that actual portion. So there are some different ways we can do that. I will also say that, and we have done this previously, is working with front desk staff. So we're looking at our whole suite of options, and we'll bring those to you as a part of the next biennial budget process.
Very good. And also, I'm assuming, but I want to check, in the assessment that you're doing, Will that include what to do with those records? Because there's a cost to that. You're either going to have to give them back or move them out or just something, right?
Absolutely. And part of the whole goal is that when you do the digitizing, you digitize the high retrieval records first, right? So we are still going to always have a paper record requirement and need for storage. We do have some options here longer term once we do that initial culling that we talked about earlier today.
So those options will be explored during the 120 assessment, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Stewart is volunteering me to help.
It's a big elephant, council member. We'll take all the volunteers we can get.
All right. It looks like we don't have any more questions on the dais, so.
All right, great. Now the fun part, talk about the long-term planning. So as part of the transition plan that we came to council with in May of last year, we promised to return at a later date with options about how to proceed with the facility and planning of the facility. Through a formal bidding process, staff identified OPSIS Architecture as the best firm to complete the project for us. And on the screen here, I included a screenshot from their submission. You can see that they have extensive experience in doing feasibility studies at facilities for other cities throughout Washington. They've also worked in Oregon. Basically, feasibility studies, building reuse, working with cities and communities together to complete these projects successfully. So they have a great track record. We're really excited to work with them. The costs with this study were included in the mid-biennial budget adjustment, as you heard Vicki talk about. But we estimate about a 9-month project timeline. And we could finish up in about fall of this year. And that's if we go through all 3 phases. So we have different phases with checkpoints with council built in, and we'll go over all those phases right now. So the first phase is the technical due diligence phase. The goal is to understand the current condition of the facility and identify any constraints that would exist that shape what we can or cannot do with the current state of the building, especially from the building code and life safety standpoint. In this phase, the consultant team will do a study of the land and a study of the building simultaneously. Of the land, there's a topographic and geotechnical review. They will update the boundary surveys of the 2 parcels that we own, and then also do a wetland delineation update. So we have old information about the wetland. Codes have changed. We need an update for that review. And then on the building side, they will do an assessment of the architectural functions of the building, complete fire and life safety, ADA code review, evaluate the structure for how it may perform during a seismic event, and then also do a general building condition assessment, so an update to that assessment that we talked about having been completed in 2022. They will also do a benchmark of the building for the clean building performance standards requirements. So that's something that the state legislature passed, and we need to benchmark the building by July of 2027. They could complete that for us during this project. Phase 1 also currently includes a market analysis, and that is just looking at the existing resources and community facilities that already exist on the plateau, also in surrounding cities. So what does Issaquah and Redmond have as far as community assets that people can go and utilize? How are those facilities being used, by what groups, and what are their operational costs that they have? So we can see if we did something similar, we might be able to say, this is what we can expect to spend. The key outputs of this phase are a technical memo summarizing the findings, a life cycle cost estimate for the building, and then a clear recommendation on whether the facility could be renovated and reused, or if it's not responsible to reuse it, maybe a recommendation to tear down and reuse the site for a different building. Again, council will receive that presentation and fully be briefed on it, and you can decide to stop the project at that time or continue on to phase 2. So phase 2 would be community engagement, and if it is approved, it will, in the scope of work, you'll see that it's kind of split off into 2 tracks. So there's track A, and that would be used if reuse of the building is supported, and engagement would focus on realistic, site-appropriate program options that align with the building's condition, site constraints, and operational considerations. Track B which is the second option, would be used if the building does not support reuse. So engagement on that track would surround the site itself, including the potential removal of the building and high-level site concepts that could be done with that wetland update and how could we use the land. In phase 2, the consultant would work closely with city staff also to plan an outreach that's designed to reach not only people that always come to the city, but also deeper into the community, including people who maybe don't particularly participate often. Maybe they don't come to our events, but we still want to hear from them. So that would be the route that we would take for community engagement. And then based on community input, the consultant would develop 3 potential use scenarios and high-level costs for each of those scenarios. Then we would have a final public meeting with the community as a feedback loop to confirm if we accurately captured everything that they told us. And then we would also ask them to help rank those options on, preference 1, 2, and 3. And then deliverables for that phase would include a community engagement summary report, and then also those potential site concepts with rough order of magnitude costs for each concept, along with a ranking that the community gave to each 1, 2, and 3. And then council would be given that presentation probably around midsummer, and you can end the project there, or you could authorize to proceed to phase 3, which is the final phase. So phase 3 is where the consultant would synthesize everything, findings from phase 1, and then community priorities identified in phase 2. We would have conceptual use options and layouts for the building or the site. It would identify capital needs, operational requirements, and also a step-by-step plan about how to move the city from where we are today to where this project identifies that we want to go. And along with that would be a funding strategy for us to consider implementing. The primary deliverable is a comprehensive feasibility study, and then they would come here and present to council about all of the findings, and council would have all the information to make a decision on what do we do next with the site. So just parting to reiterate that at the end of any phase, you could cancel the project, decide that you have enough information. Phase 1 was enough, and we have direction on what we want to do. Council approval is required to move from one phase to the next, and also beginning the feasibility study doesn't limit the city on taking other action. So it's a long-term planning effort, and if you want to direct staff to pursue interim steps while this feasibility study continues or starts, you could do that in parallel as long as adequate resources and staffing were identified to support additional uses of the building. And that's it. That's all I got. So tonight we're asking you to authorize the contract with Opsis Architecture, and I'll turn it back to the mayor for questions.
All right, Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, when we, assuming that we go through these phases, as part of the sort of community outreach, will we also do something to kind of look at how this fits in with like the pros plan? Because first of all, I think everybody agrees that we need more space, right? We need more meeting space and community space. But we also have things we already owned, like the South, right? Big Rock Park South, where there's potentially spaces that we already have a plan for to be able to start to move forward. So will we look at that as we go to make decisions? Because it's probably going to have to be an either or, not an and, because it will be a lot of money and a lot of staff time that we wouldn't be able to necessarily do them all at once. So would that be part of what we would look at so that we make those decisions together and we don't sort of stomp on something unintentionally?
I think the whole thing has to be looked at, absolutely. Okay. But that's part of the reason why we did these phases, so that when we do phase 2, if we get to that point and go to the community, we are saying, and here's what this would cost. Right? Even if it was simply a renovation versus, a rebuild, let's say, right? So that we can be really upfront with the community. This is an asset, right? That if you are interested in, right, the city could potentially do this, but this is the cost associated with it. That's going to be really key to this whole project moving forward, is being really clear with folks about our overall costs.
Yeah, because it's a great asset and it's very visible, right? Big Rock Park South, not so much. And at the same time, like, I can imagine that this cost could be exponentially more than, say, Big Rock Park South, just as an example. And so there would be sort of an ROI decision that we would have to make, like, how much does it cost? What's the overall timeline? And which one do we want to move forward with first? So I just want to make sure that when we have to make some of these decisions, that we bring everybody up to speed on all of those plans, because we do have plans to bring other space on, and these are going to be really, really, really hard decisions.
Absolutely. And assuming all, if all three phases would come through, this would all culminate during the 27-28 budget process, right? Where you all are making those decisions all the time when you're looking at different capital needs across the city.
Councilmember O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just thinking about, you were saying in phase 2, I think it is, where they would come back with the 3 options. So I was just in my mind just thinking about the what if. What if those 3 options don't exactly fit with maybe community feedback that we got, or maybe what council in a way was envisioning? Is there a way maybe of taking, parts of options and putting them together? Like, would we be confined to those 3 options? Would we be able to kind of mix them up and kind of, I don't know, to kind of take some of the parts of one option, say option 1 and option 3 that we really like, to get a better outcome? Or would we be confined to only those options?
You could definitely do that. And that's, we routinely do that in all our master plans. There may be certain aspects of one option that you like more than the other.
Okay.
So we could do that. You might also end up wanting to phase some of that work out, and that could be contemplated.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you for the tour last week. My question is on phase 1, and the consultant sounds like they're experts and they have an excellent background, so I appreciate having them. So they're going to be doing a lot of analysis, it sounds, and within that, and they probably will be bringing us this product and this information that I'm looking for. But I just want to make sure that usable is different to different people, because in order to proceed to phase 2 in the agenda bill, it says that the building has to be deemed usable. And so usable is you have to meet code. But then there's different things that I think each one of us want for this community, for this building. Like, some of us want a stage to be fully functional. I think the rooms need to be reconfigured. The kitchen needs to be moved. So those things to me would be sort of like the baseline minimum for the building to be usable. So will the analysis include sort of breakouts so that we can select based on cost to get to phase 2? Am I being clear?
Absolutely. And it hasn't been easy to write this up, because sometimes you know exactly what you want this building to do, and then you begin a study like this. But I think you are going to hear from your community different things that they want from this building. So as we've discussed internally, it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg, right? So they're going to understand the building enough, analyze it enough, but then they're going to hear from the community as to what they want, and then they're going to have to go back and see how much of that is doable. So you're going to need to get through all 3 phases to really fully understand what this building and site offer today, what it is that you are trying to make it do, and therefore what are the costs you will need to put into it to make that possible.
Okay. I just want to make sure that the analysis coming back in phase 1 will get us to phase 2, because we have to decide whether or not we believe the building is usable. Right. And so usable is having the things that we want and the benefits and the costs not outweighing, it's that the cost isn't too outrageous. So I just want to make sure that the analysis will give us enough information for a decision point.
I just want to amplify what Anjali said, because that community engagement portion of doing something like this is so critical, because then that defines the adjacencies of the different spaces in something like this, right? So I think we can all sort of have in our head sort of what are the different building blocks of a building that could be community oriented and focused and things like that. But it is going to be your community that's going to define, well, that kitchen actually needs to be here when we're thinking it needs to be here maybe, right? And then that cost associated with that. So Anjali's absolutely right. We got to get through all 3 phases, but that first phase is critical, and we all have confidence. There was the 3 of us plus one other staff member who did the review of the different responses to the RFQ process. This firm was by far all of our was.
Oh yeah, it was unanimous.
It was unanimous. That was the word I was looking for. Thank you. It was definitely unanimous. So we're excited for the opportunity to work with them.
Okay, great. I'm glad they're architects too, and not just like some generic consultant.
I also wanted to clarify usable. So it would be more like if they do this study and see that the building wouldn't sustain a seismic event that's below what the city deems responsible to have as a community center. So that when we have to do a seismic retrofit of the building, and is that cost prohibitive? And at that point, do we just remove the building and use it as a site that's complete? So usable, as you say, we can do a lot with the building as it stands. Just is it responsible? So we have to figure that out.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Treen.
Okay, let me see if I understand this. So it's 137, almost 138,000 for phase 1. So what would be the cost, estimated cost to explore the option of getting a formal appraisal, consult with a real estate professional, and develop the potential to get a buyer interested in buying this property instead? What would that cost the city? An estimate.
So as for the appraiser will likely want to know the highest and best use of the site. You might still need to do some of your studies, just like we do for other land acquisition projects. You probably want to know what critical areas, what is the usable area of the site. Based on that, we will get an appraisal and then work with the real estate consultant. So it would be the cost of the wetland study, which I believe is about 11,000. There would also be the cost of an appraisal. I don't know for a property this size, but yeah, so it would be about 20 to 30,000
for the appraisal. So we're looking at 30,000 total, maybe 40 if it was.
And I'll be honest, I'm just guessing at
I get that, yeah.
But there would be some studies.
And Council, if I may, again, this is, if that's the direction Council wants to go, obviously we're happy to pivot. I think that was one of the reasons that we came initially, is to say, what direction would you like us to go? Because they are very sort of different outcomes. I think what we will get as part of, if we do all of phase 1, is we'll get a pretty darn good basis of what the property value would be. If we wanted to augment that, we could always ask at that point in time. But I think this is really about, from Council's perspective, where do you want us to go? And our current direction was to come back with options for utilizing the building moving forward. And again, we are happy to pivot if that's the will of the Council.
Well, but you're asking us to vote tonight to spend $138,000 and get information to us in 2 to 3 months.
And Councilmember Treen, if I may, that's doing our due diligence for the direction from Council to figure out what we can do with the building, what's possible, what's viable, what the community wants. And again, it's just a different policy direction, if you will, from Council. And if that's the direction Council wants to go, we're happy to come back with a different approach.
Yeah, I would lean towards the alternative myself. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
That isn't what I was going to talk about. I wanted to know whether the city is going to have the Parks Commission be a part of this building as well as the park. When we took our tour of Big Rock South, several park board members, they know they're basically in competition or in, can't do both, so, or could duplicate work basically between the two or uses between the two. And they specifically asked that be considered, whether it would make sense to put this project under, and Anjali, you are the Parks Department, right? To have the Parks Commission also be part of this management of the project. So I just put that out there. And then how are we going to deal? I heard that we were required, our use of the building expires June 30th of 2025, and our timeline takes us out to September. So we're just going to be non-compliant for a few months. How are we going to deal with that issue?
We have the ability to extend the conditional use effort, so we'll be okay through the end of the year with the existing uses. Expanding the uses might be a little tricky, but.
Okay, thanks. Now I'm going to think about the last comment.
I do have some. So I've read this in detail. I have some concerns that phase one is too robust for what we need to make, decide directionally where we think we're going to go. So I want to nitpick a couple items. I think it would be good for our staff to look at the Clean Buildings Performance Standards. So I went to Commerce and I read some of the regulations and the exemptions. And I've got to question how we're going to be able to do the baseline analysis, because we don't have there's not enough physical occupancy in the building to do a baseline analysis. So once we do it right now, when it's basically empty, you put anybody in there, it's going to exceed the baseline substantially. So there's an exemption right now for if the building doesn't have 50% occupancy in the prior 12 months, we have like an extra year to do it. So that one we might punt on and not pay the consultant to look at if our staff determine we don't even need to look at that quite yet. I think it's important to do, and obviously we have to comply with state law, but I don't necessarily know that we need to pay a consultant to read the Commerce FAQs and bill us for it. So throwing that out there. I support doing MEP assessment. I think that's baseline. I support going and doing a seismic assessment so we know what we're dealing with. But so much of what the costs are going to come down to is occupancy change and an increase in occupancy load for the building. If we determine that the building doesn't change occupancy, then that changes the level of code updates we're going to have to do. So what I would like to understand from David or whoever is, what are the different paths we'd go down based on occupancy changes, and what are the likely occupancy changes or the phasing that might happen with occupancy changes. And I think we would need to get public input on what they want from the building first, and then send CD community development, a couple options of give us an idea of what we're dealing with. Are we talking about a ton of code compliance, or is it the same occupancy so there's very minimal? That definitely changes what we're doing. We're paying a lot of money for architecture to come up with, they're looking at everything, and we don't necessarily need them to look at everything. This could be knocked out at the seismic assessment, right? So I think phase one is a bit too big. I also have a concern about spending money on, I don't understand why we're spending money on a landscape review in phase one. I don't know that matters based on our decision-making criteria that we're going to have. I don't know why we are spending money on, let's see, where is it? The wetlands assessment. If we don't change occupancy, we're not changing, if we decide not to do any building remodels or anything, I don't believe the wetlands have any impact on our decision-making process. So the information might be nice to have if we decide that, hey, what the building has right now isn't going to work for a community center or whatever. All of us have different ideas. It's just not going to work. So we need to look at alternatives. I just think phase one is too big of a bite at an apple, and we should pare this down so that we can make a quick decision and then pivot if we need to. We also have other buildings in the city, to Councilmember Stewart's point, the Boys and Girls Club. Maybe we move things around and, that change. So I just think we need to go to the public sooner, get a baseline assessment, go to the public sooner, get what they want, throw a couple options out at community development, find out what it actually would mean for us, and then go for a larger assessment based on likely scenarios we might do. So I'll pause there and see if I'm way off base or you have any thoughts on that.
Those are fair comments. What happens when you piecemeal your studies, if you do that fragmented approach, and you reach the next phase and you determine that you want to use the building a certain way, and then you find out that the site doesn't offer enough parking, then you have to pause, and then you have to go back and do a whole nother study and find out what are the wetlands as they are today, what are the buffers, and therefore can you expand your parking or not. So it is, there is an upfront cost. You are spending on some of these studies upfront, but then it helps you move forward with all the information in hand. Otherwise, you would have to pause and do the studies at a later date, and it ends up being more expensive and taking more time if you don't have all that information up front.
Okay, maybe I'll ask for a different example on the parking, because, and this is from my personal experience doing TI in my own building, right? I have to go to the city and they determine occupancy, and then from that, the parking lot does or doesn't have enough spaces or accessible spaces, and then I've got to figure it out. We don't, until we decide this, which way we want to, how are we going to do an assessment for, as your example, parking, when are they just going to give us a list of like 1,000 different potential options and give us the parking number? Like that's where I'm getting lost at. Is like this is almost like a circular problem, and I get dealing with this. Doing my TI myself was kind of a circular problem, but yeah, that's it. That's it.
It's just a timing. It'll just take longer. If we do just the minimum we need to then figure out what the building is capable, then we go out into the community, and then we'll have to say, wait, we don't know if the site can do this, then we'll go and do the site studies, then we'll come back and refine it. So it is possible, and like I said, you will spend less upfront. It might end up taking more time. So if you're keen to get this done, to be honest, staff had initially considered doing some of these studies ahead and separate of the feasibility. Like it's one more burden on this consultant to manage everything, but the whole point of it is to get it done in a short amount of time.
Okay, and just for everyone's visibility, my viewpoint is there's no shortage of need for space in the city from our community, and I've heard a lot of asks for it. So I'm looking at what is the least we can do to make this building useful for the residents. They've already paid for the building. What can we do to get the doors open? I'm not looking for the perfect solution. I'm looking for a viable solution. And then down the road, we've got potentially the parks district that might come up that would provide more money for us to be able to do the ideal thing. And maybe that's when we go for what is the end result. But for now, I'm looking at it from how do we get nonprofits who need to use space in there as quickly as possible. So just to give some context for where I'm coming from.
Mayor, if I may, I really appreciate that clarification. I think one of the pieces that, in thinking this through sort of soup to nuts, one of those pieces you were highlighting, which is down the road, if you want to do something with, let's say council chose to go towards a park district, we would want to know what is possible at that building and or site for the future, as well as what you can do today in what I would call the near term to be able to use the building. And I think part of this is really to provide you all as much optionality as possible, as fast as possible, so that you can make decisions, whether they're short, medium, or long term. I think our goal was to try to lay that out. And again, as the team was pointing out, it lines up within the time frame where it's going to take us to rezone the property. It lines up in that same time frame and then butts up into the budgeting process. So we would be able to presumably and hopefully make informed decisions if council chose to go with with all three steps in the process. I think the other piece that I think it's important to point out, and the team knows this because they've been fielding all of the inquiries, there are a lot of competing inquiries in the building, and that it can't be everything to all people. And so somewhere in there has to be a way to say, well, what can we really do based on what's there, and how much does it cost to do something different, even if you're saying moving walls, to your point. And so I think the part of that is just, again, for you all to have as much information so that you have as much flexibility as possible to make those decisions, to your point, Mayor, to try to get as many people in there as you can. If that's the goal, then we'd like to be able to have that information as fast as possible so that you can make those decisions. And I totally understand what you're saying about, doing the phasing differently. And I think the team is up for trying to go a different path. I think at the end of the day, my takeaway is that if we still wanted to go through the whole process, it would be a longer process if we broke it up into different pieces and spread it out more. And that's okay. That's just a thing.
Okay, I've got one final question on the phasing element. Was there discussion with the consultant, or is there a world where it would make sense, instead of breaking up phase 1 into smaller pieces, where phase 1 and 2 are done iteratively so that we can efficiently use the consultant's time so that they are being fed information from the residents, and we don't end up in a situation where, well, we didn't consider that, or, whatever. They can put their time and energy into what seems to be the direction the residents are going, so we can have a better idea. Was that discussed? Is that possible?
I think when we approach this as a team, both internally as well as with the consultants, one of the things that we talked about multiple times was wanting to make sure that the residents understood what the cost would be associated with their wants and desires, right? Because when we go and we talk about things like, here's a new building, here's a potential for a community center, that sort of thing, there's a lot of excitement about that, right? And we don't sometimes come with, and if you want that, this is what it's going to cost, right? And we know today that we don't have the ongoing revenue to support an ongoing staffed community center today, right? Unless other choices are made, right? So that's just a reality. And so we wanted to have that direct conversation with the community about, if you want this, right, we can do that, but here is going to be the cost that's associated with it. So that's why we broke it out in that way. And that's why we would recommend doing that, so we can have an honest and realistic conversation with our community.
Thank you. Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, when I look at phase 1, I feel like, at least from the assessment standpoint, most of those are going to be needed no matter what, right? So the understanding the wetlands and how the codes have changed, because it's my understanding, and then also assessing the building and what might need to change, even if we didn't change the use, even if we didn't move any walls, there may still be work that has to be done that is big enough that we would then have to bring the building and the parking lot up to code. So it's not even about changing the parking lot for new needs. We might have to change the parking lot because it's not within code anymore. So if we have to do a whole HVAC repair, right, and replace that, which means we're going to have to potentially make changes to the roof, and we don't know yet because we have to do the assessment, that could be big enough that triggers us to have to bring other parts up to current codes. So we have to understand all of those piece parts before we could even say, could we open the building to similar but more uses today, right? So I think, at least from the assessment side, now I think what you're getting at is, once we have all of that data, do we want them to put together, some general proposals before going to the community, or do we want community input first? And that is a bit of a chicken and an egg, because if you just throw out, hey, what do you want to do? We're going to get like, well, we want to build a spaceship to go to the moon as what, right? So I think having some general ideas, because at least when I've looked at other things you've brought to us for other parks and things, it's really like buckets of ideas. It's like, we could do these types of things, or we could do these types of things, or these types of things. Then they take that out to the community, get additional input, and then what they bring to us will be refined based on that community input. So it's not like, hey, look, we have this like completely designed out, and it's going to be like, you could have A, B, or C, and there's no variation. It's really more like, generally. And tell me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine that's kind of how you've done some of the pros plans for some of like the Big Rock Park stuff, right? They're like buckets of ideas, if you will.
There are, and I believe phase 2 is broken into 2 parts. And the first part is listening to the community. The second part is going back and then sketching up those options and coming back to them to make sure that they're seeing, like we've heard them.
Right.
And they are getting that input. We would also be very keen to know what council wants to see from this building. And so the scope of work is not written to that level of detail, but when we come back to you at the end of phase 1, and you have a sense of an analysis of the building and the site and the potential costs, at that same meeting, we would hear from you as to what are your wishes and dreams for this facility. And then we would hear from the community. We could hear from the commission if that is council's direction as well, and then compile that when we come back to you.
And to the mayor's point, would there be a huge change if we either got a checkpoint after the analysis was done before the options were put together, or if we moved the break between phase 1 and phase 2 to give us the update of the assessments only, and then once we have that, go on to here might be some of the options, so that they're doing that community outreach phase with options all in phase 2. What would be the cost differential? Because one of the things I want to do is that material. Like, are we talking about $10,000 or $20,000, and by doing this all up front, we get more information before we do the budget? Or are we talking about those options are like half of the cost? And I apologize if that's in the contract and I didn't see that, but. Because I kind of hear what you're saying, but I think we need all the data for sure. All of the analysis I think we have to have, because we don't know what's going to trigger enough, even if we don't rezone, enough of a modification that we would have to bring everything up to current codes. Because that was built in 2011?
2008.
2008, okay, even further back. So our codes and our wetland borders and all of that has changed quite significantly, I believe, since then. So,
But may I offer a clarification of what I was saying? What I don't know is that in the International Building Code, there's occupancy levels, right? And if we're not changing occupancy levels, what I wanted to understand was what code work would we actually need to do? If we're not changing, my understanding is pretty minimal. If we are changing to a higher intensity, that's what I was getting to, is I'm not convinced that we'd be changing the use in such a way that we would need to actually change code. Simply,
right, but if the HVAC system is determined to be not up to snuff, or it's going to need to be replaced within the next 2 years, and that effort in and of itself, not even changing occupancy, might be enough that we then have to change the roof, and then by changing the roof and having to do the HVAC upgrades, that could be enough to trigger us to have to come up to code. But we don't know that until they can do the assessment and understand. Like on the YMCA, because Sevda does such a great job, she has a very detailed report of exactly, like for every system and for every part of that, and she works with the YMCA, and she knows exactly when those things are going to need to be, upgraded or replaced and stuff like that. And I think that's what we're missing here, right, is we don't have that level of detail on this building. And until we know that, we don't really know what things, even if we didn't change any occupancy levels, would we have to change anyway, right? So I don't know if there's a break of like, we could just do 2 things and then make a decision. I kind of feel like we need to gather all of that data to understand. Because it could be that they say the HVAC's good for another 5 years. And so to your point, we can say, hey, let's just keep doing these minimal things for 5 years while we work on other stuff and come up with a new plan, right? But we don't know any of that until we get some of these building and equipment assessment updates.
I think what the project team is hearing is,
but I'm fine with the way it is, just, but I'm just trying to, be accommodating.
But what, at least what I'm hearing, let me speak for myself, is I am hearing, if you are seeing milestones come sooner than later on this project, right? Don't wait for that initial timeline to run out. Come tell us, staff, what you're hearing and what the consultants are telling you and what the data is showing you sooner than later, so that if we can accelerate the timeline for decision making, for that first decision making gate, right, that we can do that. And I think that the staff can commit to working with the consultant to do that.
Thank you for that. Councilmember.
And I'll just throw in that while looking at all options, including selling, is maybe something we should consider, given the scarcity of land and things, I would not be in favor of selling that property because we do need space. And it is something that that Jesse Bond gave us some pretty good lessons. When you have an opportunity to get prime property, do it because it will never get less expensive.
Councilmember O'Farrell.
Thank you. Almost forgotten what I was going to say. Let's see if I can. Let's see if I can remember. I don't support selling the site. I would like us to do this investigation. I like the contract that you've presented to us. I know it's $300,000, and I know to me personally that's an awful lot of money. But I think in the scheme of our budget is not. I would think. Information is power, and I want to know all the information and all the uses and how we can use it. I think if we break it up in piecemeal, it might end up costing us more and taking longer. And I also think that it's not wholly transparent to the public then. What are they doing with that building? They keep doing this and then they go back to do a study, and they've done 10 studies now and we still don't have the building open. So I think if we can get the study underway, and if in phase 1 they come back and they say, well, we think you should sell the building, well, then maybe we'll consider it then. I'm supportive of this contract. I think, Rachel, as you just said, if coming back to council intermittently and giving us updates, that sounds really good. But I support what you presented in front of us, and I think the sooner we get started, the better. I appreciate that the community is anxious to get in there and do various work in there. I even heard a thrift store, which I think would be a marvellous thing too, but we have to make sure that we're going to start on the right foot and not kind of double back and redo our work over and over again. So I'm supportive of this contract. Thank you for your work.
Councilmember Lamb.
I just have a quick question. What is the occupancy number for this building?
The number that this building can currently occupy is just shy of 1,500.
Okay, thank you. Oh, so if we added a classroom, would it stay 1,500? I don't know how they do.
Are you
occupancy.
asking about what it is designed to be, or how many we are currently occupying in?
I guess I just don't really understand how they determine occupancy. If you don't change the footprint, it'll be 1,500. If you change and add classrooms, does it still stay 1,500?
Like when you add walls and different doors to go through, it changes the fire code. How people move through the building, so it would change it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Boyer.
All right, guys, question. I'm sorry if it was in the materials, but the 303 total, are we signing up for all of that, or is this an iterative contract?
Yeah, it's a cost not to exceed. So if along the way we don't do something, or if they don't, take as much staff time as they thought and they charge us less, and then also each phase you could stop and you don't have to spend all 300.
303 is the not to exceed?
Yes.
Okay. And is there a threshold that they're going to tell us that this is the point to sell?
I don't think that's on them to say. They'll give us the information. They might have a recommendation, but ultimately it's council's decision on what that threshold would be.
They're not going to say, wow, you're looking at the AC, everything. This is just a negative investment.
No, they're in the profession of telling you the information of what the facts, and then you guys can decide.
And to do some type of an assessment, as Councilmember Treen was saying, to do a real estate assessment, do you need to do all the things in phase 1 to accomplish that?
Potentially not, but
just a subset of those.
A subset.
Yeah.
So what are the key things that you need to do just to get a sense of the dollars you're in for? Is it mainly the engineering pieces, structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, general condition, and such? Or do you also need to, and seismic, or do you also need to do, the site itself?
I would say the site is even more important because if somebody bought this piece of property, the first thing they'd want to know is how much of it is buildable. And to know that, you would need to know how constrained the site is. And so understanding the critical areas, the buffers would be important. I would put that even because, yeah, it's more than likely. It is based on who buys it, they may or may not keep the building.
Got it. And then if there is no threshold that they're going to establish or no guidance, what is your guidance?
I should have clarified, maybe my introduction wasn't clear. This contract is to understand the building and the site and how we would use it. The three options that were presented to council were to lease the building, sell the building, or to do the study. And council had directed staff to do the study. So that is all the consultant's going to do, is do the complete feasibility study.
But we're making decisions amongst alternatives. Selling them is one of those alternatives. Is that true?
That is council's choice, yes.
Yeah, Councilmember, that's always going to be council's direction and choice. However, I think at a certain point, depending on cost and complexity, what you might hear from the staff is this is kind of going well beyond what our financial capacity is to do X or Y or Z.
Yeah.
And again,
that's what I'm asking. I'm wondering, what is that?
Well, and I think part of that is an ongoing conversation as we get more information. Sure. I think that has to be a little iterative.
Okay.
I don't know that we, on our professional settings, can tell you that off the top right at the moment. I think there's always a balance between community desire, need, finances, and reality, and where that line is. I think that's the question that we're trying to get enough information to be able to, for you all to be able to set that line, if you will.
Got it. Absolutely, I understand that. And so I was just wondering how we're going to get to that point. If this is more information that we would need at some point, because this is not to exceed, are we going to wait until phase one is complete before we hear from you? Is that the plan?
Well, I think,
as it stands now, I guess.
I think that as it stands now, phase one is a decision point. But as I said earlier, I think if we get pertinent information, right, that could sway things one way or another, that we're committing to bring that back earlier than maybe the formal phase one is complete. So, for instance, worst case scenario, right, if there are significant seismic issues with that, we might come and say, maybe we should stop right now.
Yeah.
Just obviously using some hyperbole here, but trying to show you that we're not just going to blindly go through phase one to check all the boxes if we find some fatal flaw.
Can we formalize it in some way? I mean, if you get to the point where there's a sinkhole out there we don't know about we'd want you to say, let's stop.
We would want to say that as soon as possible as well.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So is there some way to make it in your motion tangible? Yeah.
You could do it in your motion or an amendment to a motion to have them do that, if you want to formalize it.
Yeah, I'd like to. I don't know how.
So you could say that, for instance, you could say that if staff identifies a fatal flaw prior to the completion of phase one, they will return.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Stewart.
If there are no more questions, I was going to help. Michael asked me to help.
Perfect. Okay, is there any other questions for the team?
Sorry, I just...
Nope, go for it.
I just have one. The last item on phase one, conduct a market assessment to assess how the building and its surrounding site responds to current and future needs. We don't really need that for phase one, do we? We really just need to understand the condition of the building and what it's going to take to make it usable without doing a market assessment of how it would be used. Is that what I'm hearing? I mean, if we find out, because that doesn't really provide us much usefulness. What's useful on the usage of the building is phase two, where this could be completed as part of phase two if we decide to move forward with that as an option.
Yeah, I got it. So the point of a market analysis and doing it in phase one would be so that in the community engagement phase, we go to the community and say, this is what the building can potentially sustain. This is what is already offered in the community. So if the building could sustain a senior center, but we have senior services at Beaver Lake Lodge, for one example, it has performance stage, but there's performance stages. They may be hard to use because the market analysis would show us who uses them and how frequently they're used. But you could rent Lake Washington School District or Issaquah School District, I think now rents out their stage. So it is another level of what we can bring to the community to show them this is what the building can take and this is what is already out there. What would you like to see?
Yeah, I'm not saying not to complete that study, but just not as part of phase one. Make it the first thing in phase two.
First thing in phase two.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we can look at that as we refine the final work with the consultant.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, just one quick comment is that I just want to point out, like, the first phase is $137 or $138,000. While that's not nothing, that's not an extremely high number. And while I appreciate all of the suggestions, I do think at some point we're getting a little nitpicky. So, like, if we pulled out the market study, we'd have to pull out the options, because the market study isn't assessing what the market value is. It's assessing what the community needs are, as I understand that, right? Like you said, like stage, like if we wanted to offer it up as, we could use this as a community theater space or something, but we have theaters in these buildings, but here's how much they're already used. And we don't have a lot of the details on that. We have some information, but not enough. So we wouldn't be able to complete the options to go out to the community, which is the end of phase one and beginning of phase two. So like if we move that out, we'd have to move the options out as well. So, I mean, if we want to tear that apart, we can, but I'm kind of happy with if we put in a checkpoint in phase one that you come back to council, that we could still adjust that with the consultant if we decide that. So, I mean, I'm just going to throw that out there and say that I appreciate the suggestions, but we may only be talking about $10,000 or $20,000, and the staff time we spend to go back and forth may eat into that savings quite a bit.
Yeah, and the point of doing it, we did discuss this internally, if we should just push it to phase two. It's just going to slow things down again a little. This gives the consultant a head start to do a quick analysis of what's going on in adjacent communities and within Sammamish. And at the end of the study, that would be also, it's basically a part of the study, right? Like what is going on outside there to be able to guide the second phase, which is going to the community. And when they say they need things, they should be educated so that presentation that goes into the community will tell the community, these are the amenities you already have, and just help the conversation. So it would just slow phase two down a little so that the consultant would gather that information if we did it in phase two. But I think what I'm hearing is spend the money judiciously. Even though it's $137,000, at the kickoff with the consultant, we can share some of this conversation. And if there are pieces of it, like we said, it's a chicken and egg, how much of the architecture or occupancy or do you study at the start, and how much do you wait till you've heard from the community? And so we can definitely share some of these concerns and just make sure that they are spending the minimum they need, but not, kind of saying don't work on a certain part of the scope, if that's okay with council.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I realize this isn't necessarily a order of magnitude. We're going to do this, and then we're going to do that, and then we're going to do this. They probably have a lot of, I don't know what the actual order they're going to take it in, but I think as long as you report back to us as you find out information about how it's going, that'll allow us enough review to be comfortable. That's my take.
Are we ready?
Okay, if there's no further questions, I would, if someone would like to make a motion as presented or make a different motion, I'd love to hear it.
I'm going to give this a shot.
Perfect.
Ready, Michael? Yeah. We're going to do this together. I move that the City Council authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Opsis Architecture to complete the feasibility assessment, wow, I can't speak, and community use planning of Building 120 not to exceed $303,638,000 in the 3 phases defined, including a checkpoint with council either publicly if something catastrophic is found or through our city manager updates once some of the early data comes back during phase 1. Did I nail it?
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you very much. And that was a long motion. I can't repeat it, but it's been recorded. So, is there any discussion on this, or would you like to speak to your motion?
No, please don't.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
So that was, all right, there we go. The motion passes.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you for all the time you spent with our questions. That was very much appreciated. Okay, up next, we're moving on to item number 22, contract authorization for the 2026 pavement condition survey and management plan. And we'll have Audrey Starcy joining us and Lei Wu.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council. For the record, I'm Audrey Starcy. I'm your Director of Public Works. I'm joined this evening by Lei Wu, our City Engineer. We wanted to provide a quick shout out to our other two project managers for this project. With further ado, we'll get going. So we do have a really quick presentation for you. At the end of the presentation, we are wanting to seek authorization from council to award a contract. This was a contract that we had began in 2025. It expired at the end of the year, and we are seeking a separate contract award this evening to continue the work through 2026. So our pavement management strategic plan is a long-term roadmap, pun intended there, for taking care of our pavement citywide that aligns with our city, our vision and our goals. Really, it defines where we are in the process, where we want to be. It, in essence, defines our level of service for pavement and how do we get there. So our implementation strategies that you'll see a little bit more of this evening, and how we pay for it with our fiscal sustainability. We have a lot of other really big picture planning and policy work going on this year, so just wanted to showcase how this work will tie into other projects. So with our pavement management strategic plan, we will be bringing forward policies and performance metrics for council's consideration throughout the spring. Those policies and performance metrics will be incorporated into our transportation master plan update, as well as our in-progress right-of-way code and public works standards update that'll also be going to council later on this year. The funding scenarios and implementation plan will become part of our 2027-2028 citywide CIP. I'm so sorry, there's a typo there. That's meant to be a 6-year CIP, and our 2027 through 2028 budget and work plan, as well as future budgets and work plans. Of course, everything within the strategic pavement management strategic plan will, of course, inform our implementation, which is our pavement management program. Implementation of pavement in Sammamish is spread across 3 funds for the most part: our general fund, street fund, and our transportation capital fund 340. So we'll go through those in a little bit more detail with the presentation. So with that, I'm going to hand things over.
Thank you, Audrey. A little bit of payment management before we get going with the project. So the lifespan of arterial streets is about 15 to 20 years. The lifespan of payment on local streets is about 20 to 30 years. So payment management is a systematic process for jurisdictions to operating, upgrading, and managing their networks of streets in order to be cost-effective and efficient. So also to extend payment life cycle and maximize the investment. So payment management involves, hold on. Payment management involves planning, evaluating, and prioritizing maintenance and rehabilitation activities so that payment conditions stay in a good state of repairs. Typical components of payment management start from data collection of payment conditions, and then technical analysis, including performing payment performance modeling, selecting and testing different maintenance and rehabilitation strategies, and of course prioritizing street selections. And it comes along with budgeting implications. The last steps, project execution, is usually done in the form of a payment management program, and that's across agencies and jurisdictions of the nation. For the City of Sammamish, our payment management program includes 3 components, as Audrey just described. So I will skip that. Some definition of fundamental terms. Payment conditions assessment is the calculation of specific scores of street payment sections. So that's called payment condition index. I'll explain that in a second. It's updated every 3 to 5 years, and that's the industry best practice, and it's the foundation to payment management. Payment condition index is a standard performance measure of payment conditions. So it ranges between 0 and 100. 0 means complete failure. 100 means perfect. So PCI, of course, is a performance measure itself, but it's also widely used as a performance target. It's calculated based on 3 factors. One is the type of distresses a payment segment has. Could it be pothole? Could it be cracks? Could it be something even more serious? The severity of each distress and extent of each distress. So I have some pictures that demonstrate typical examples. So, starting from the up left portion is a perfect piece of payment, and it goes down to the left and goes down to a failed payment of PCI of 3. And then this picture shows some payment preservation and rehabilitation methods. So the 4 bundles on the left is what typically can be done through annual maintenance. It's spot repairs such as pothole repair. It's sealing of different cracks and things like that. So the third column, the overlay, is usually done through preservation project that's done by contractors. And then the last column to the very right is when a street payment is in such poor conditions, it needs a relatively complete reconstruction. That is, you replace the sub-base materials, you even replace the base materials and the complete payment. So that is payment management 101. Hand it over to Audrey.
Thank you, Lei. So brief history on pavement management in Sammamish. We have approximately 445 lane miles. So that's from Sammamish all the way to somewhere, I think, in southern Oregon, if we were to stretch them out with one singular lane. It is our biggest asset that we maintain, and the city has invested significantly in the last decade. We do perform routine PCAs, or pavement condition assessments. The last survey was conducted in 2021, and we have a citywide PCI of 86. We have some comparables for you in a few slides, but that's a very high PCI. These assessments have provided plans and recommendations to council, typically that align with budget cycles. And although we do have a systematic and programmatic process, we do not have policies that really need to have in place that would be normally included in a pavement management strategic plan. The image on the right shows the pavement condition assessment report, just a quick GIS map from the last report. We'll have a new one coming in about a month or so. So historically, as I mentioned, we've collected data routinely. Cities do have the option of collecting this in between a 3 to 5 year span, but this is a pretty good year timeline for our size of city and wear and tear on our roads. Historically, we have modeled those results using a software called Paver. With this contract, we are switching to a new software called Pavement Express. It has better dashboard capabilities, and it's a Trimble-owned company, which will sync to our asset management system, CityWorks. So really excited to have our capital projects in one that'll talk to some of our maintenance repairs in the other software. Historically, we have primarily used certain window or certain rehabilitation and maintenance strategies, including patching, lay walkthrough patching, and gap mastic is a new tool we've used recently, crack sealing and overlays. We can consider other methodologies. We always like to incorporate new technology, so you'll see some of those as we come back to council later this spring. Those will, of course, affect our 5-year plan and our budget as well. And again, as we've kind of had fixed budget, and we've always prioritized PCI as the foundational layer of how we address roads going forward, and typically have always included or prioritize our roads that are, have higher classifications just due to the volume and their life safety routes. So other programs that are definitely tied into pavement, we do have a 5-year no-cut policy. So if the road is impacted, it requires a full, I can't remember if it's a half street or full overlay. So that's something that we take very seriously in our planning. We aim to coordinate with utility providers and construction projects. We're just assessing some current work now. We reach out to utilities, school districts. We need to plan with our own construction projects. We have a stormwater pipe condition assessment program that is designed to camera our own pipes ahead of when the overlays go in, so we hopefully don't have a failure with a brand new overlay with a failed pipe underneath. So there's a lot of moving pieces that go into the program. That's why we like to plan years out. There's also some changing stormwater requirements with our new stormwater permit with the state, where we'll need to provide additional water quality treatment, so we're looking at that with this plan as well. And many times we have to have ADA improvements in place ahead of the overlay as well. So again, lots of planning that goes into these projects, and just a handful of the folks that we coordinate with as we plan for these projects. In front of you is the pavement management program budget for the 2025 through 2026 biennium. With this biennium, we have a street fund. So there's $3.5 million allocated for essentially overlays and crack sealing. Our transportation capital fund, there's $1.8 million allocated for road reconstruction and some rehabilitation. We have some thickened overlays or layered overlays that we can have with minimal cutting into the base, so we can utilize that funding for that type of a project as well. And then the third bucket here is our general fund dollars that's allocated to this plan itself, as well as what we don't have in here is that the in-house support services that our own crews do with pothole repairs. As I mentioned before, we have an 86 PCI, which is incredible. Most of our neighboring agencies have a much lower both goal for their PCI as their actual PCIs. Of course, the PCI will change from year to year, but having a minimum goal and a minimum PCI rating and a target PCI rating allows us to plan a little bit more flexibly as well. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Lei to provide a quick update on the project.
Thank you, Audrey. So this project includes 3 components. I'll be talking a little bit more about those 3 components. But first of all, let's kind of just talk a little bit through about what this project will achieve. So in a month or so, we will know the payment condition index of every public street in our community. And in addition, we'll be seeking and collecting community feedback. And then in terms of where we want to be, we will be working with council to establish payment management policies, goals, and specific PCI targets and minimums for both citywide and by categories. By categories, we our thinking right now is on roadway classifications, including arterials and local streets. In terms of what do we do, or how do we get there? So we will recommend. We'll work with council on a 5-year implementation plan. That implementation plan will have a list of streets to be preserved, as well as other actions that we need to complete. Of course, we need to answer the question how we will pay for it. We will explore and work with the council on funding strategies to make sure that every City of Sammamish dollar goes as far as it can. So, and then, so I went through like the typical component of payment management. So our City of Sammamish's 2021 payment management report follows the typical components of payment management very much. You have GIS, you have field data collection, technical analysis, budgeting, and things like that. Of course, all documented in a report. So the difference of the 2026 payment management strategic plan includes several factors. So starting from the recognition that street payment conditions are directly relevant to each resident of the City of Sammamish and also employees and visitors to our community. So it's very important for this project to seek input and feedback from the community. So we'll have a robust community engagement process. Also, in alignment with the city's commitment to racial equity, we are applying the racial equity toolkit via the criticality matrix. We will be bringing that matrix back to council in the upcoming months. In addition, we'll be setting payment management policies, PCI targets, and minimums. We'll review our operation strategies to see how we can improve the efficiency of that. And we will also take advantage of best industry practice to incorporate new treatment methods. And most importantly, we'll explore funding scenarios. So as Audrey mentioned, that the current contract expired, we started working with the consultant in August last year. They spent about $80,000 out of an authorized amount of $210,000 and a little bit over $700. The scope, in order to finish the remaining work, we are asking council to authorize a new contract with the same consultant for $121,000, $930.44. The total amount of what's already been spent, which is $80,000, and this new contract amount is slightly under the original authorized amount. The reason is that even though the scope is the same, the updated schedule of prices actually works a little bit in our favor. So there are three components in the project. The payment conditions assessment will be the foundation for developing and completing the payment management strategic plan. Relatively separate to payment management is we took advantage of this opportunity and request the consultant to collect right-of-way asset inventory. Think of street lights, traffic signs, and things of that. Even though that's separate from payment management, that's very helpful for our right-of-way asset management. So So in terms of what's been completed so far, so the consultant have completed all data collection. They are in the process of analyzing the data for payment conditions. They are also analyzing the data for right-of-way asset inventory. So, so the remaining, so the consultant will calculate PCIs for every street segment in our city. Of course, those are public streets. Or we will use that as a foundation to complete the payment management strategic plan draft. Of course, in order to get there, we'll need to finalize our community engagement strategy. Right now, we have a draft in place. We will also, right now, staff has proposed some preliminary project prioritization criteria. We need to work with the council because that's a policy decision by council. So we are looking at sometime later this year to complete the payment management strategic plan. And we will also be updating our city's GIS asset management database to complete the right-of-way asset inventory piece. So a lot of work to be done in the upcoming months in spring. Mostly all the technical analysis, the community engagement process, and working with council on policy questions. So I covered the content for this already. So just a heads up for council, our current thinking is that we'll be working with you on, those policy questions. Of course, policy questions will evolve. There might be new ones showing up. So so first one is the performance matrix. That's the PCI targets and minimums for different street classifications. The second one is street selection and prioritization, which streets gets, for example, repaved when, with what method. That's going to be in alignment with the application of racial equity toolkit, which is the criticality matrix, and it facilitates the program implementation by street classifications. We will also be working with council on funding scenarios, including, for example, what portion of funding goes to arterial roads, what portion goes to local streets, what treatment, what payment maintenance treatment methods, or what the funding mechanism might be. So lots of questions going to council. All the policy questions will feed into the development of a 5-year program implementation plan. So what's not showing up here is that any payment management policies will be council decision. So we look forward to working with you very closely in the spring, and we look forward, our target is completing the final plan by the end of this year. That is the end of the presentation. Welcome any of your comments, questions, and guidance.
Thank you for taking the time to put that together. Council, are there any questions? Deputy Mayor.
I just have one question. I know I need to go back and review the work that was already adopted before. I have not done that yet, but in the summary, it talks about the public process, the communication with the public, but it doesn't say what that is. What is the community outreach? Is it just these meetings with the council, or is there something else going on?
We are working on refining our final communication, our plan, communication strategic plan for this plan. So we have been working with the racial equity team on what that looks like. So we would like to engage more of the community. So we hope that we hear from the community. Sometimes when you have really fantastic roads, we may not hear as much through our normal avenues like requests and different things like that, but we would love to engage the community more, aside from these meetings, of course.
Councilmember Trine.
Yeah, the 80,000, approximately 80,000 has been spent to date. Is that the van driving around and taking the pictures? Because when you say the data,
Yeah, I believe it's the van driving around with their LiDAR technology, and they also were doing the full right-of-way asset scan while they were out there scanning the roads.
okay, cool. Thanks.
Any other council members? Councilmember Lamb.
For the criticality matrix, is one of the factors home values, like areas and neighborhoods that are where the home values are less? Because to me, that would be something that could be inequitable when it comes to deciding on paving certain areas.
Yeah, I think we had proposed road classification, high use areas are equity factors, and let me take a look. Sorry, high use areas, so if they're adjacent to commercial areas, transit stops, schools, public buildings, and parks. And then we had looked at other factors such as owners versus renters, majority race, poverty rate, and low paying jobs.
So those are the equity factors.
Right, so would an equity factor be your home value? Because there are areas in the neighborhood where the homes are older. There may be, like, because they're older, they could be lower income. So that, I think, should be one of the factors.
We didn't include that initially, but we can certainly take a look. And again, we're working with the racial equity team, so we'll take a look at.
Yeah, because you're going into neighborhoods too, right?
Yes.
Right, okay, thank you.
Any other council members? Okay, so I've got a question. On the other alternatives to consider, it basically says if we don't do this, the roads will fall into disrepair and residents will be upset. But we, to my knowledge, haven't had one of these before. We've just done PCI analysis and then picked which roads to do. I'm looking at a $14 million drawdown on our ending fund balance, and every penny matters. And I'm curious, I don't want to, trip over pennies, but
sure.
What realistically in our decision-making process for the roads we're going to do overlays or fixes, will we get actionable data from? Do we really anticipate there being changes to our decisions? We've got the map you showed from 2021. Most of the roads were above 71 or whatever they were blue. And then a lot of the roads that were lower have been addressed between 2021 and now. So there's, of course, over the years, there's going to be degradation of the roads, but our roads are in pretty good condition, as you mentioned. Do we really need to spend this money right now? There's like ideal, right? And then there's what should we live with?
Yeah, it's a great question. What we are looking for in this plan, a handful of things, is we would love to have a plan that we're able to share with the community. What we have in place right now is a very technical report that we use as staff. The other part of this contract is running the modeling software to provide council with some different scenarios so that you can consider, so you can be able to make an informed decision about setting minimum and target PCIs. So we need to have the software in place, and we need to have the consultant help us put that software in place and then run those models. So that we can present that information to you. So there's a lot of policy pieces that we don't have in place now that this would be putting into one plan. Our model plan that we are looking at as City of San Diego, there's a lot of graphics, it's easy to read, and that also helps us. We are approached across the city, different streets, different conditions on those streets, and we would like to have a plan in place that we can provide to the community that sets very clear policy direction.
Yeah, and the 86, like in my estimation, is outdated. We hear a lot from neighbors about their roadway conditions, and we really need policy directions in terms how we adjust that, rather than like relying on the traditional payment management process, relying exclusively on PCI. So. I'm sorry, can you go into that in more detail? I think the majority of the program
what we talked about was getting a PCI number and setting policy direction on that, but you're talking about using something in addition to or later on top of PCI to make the
Yes,
decision?
so so I'll try to be a little more clear. So our payment management practice by far is in alignment with, the traditional payment management approach, which relies on the payment condition index. So the analysis as well as decision making is very technical. It doesn't engage with the community. We have the PCI, that's all we need. We have the budget implications, that's all we need. So this project will establish policy directions, such as our payment management policies, adopts the PCI targets and minimums for citywide as well as roadway classifications. This project will apply the racial equity toolkit, which is the first for a public works project. It will also engage with the community in terms of taking consideration of what our approach on local streets, which we have not had the policy direction before. So those are some of the differences, I would say, probably not all of it.
But the policy decision on working on local streets, that's separate from this contract, right? Couldn't we make that decision make that decision without this contract?
We need this contract in place to provide the data so that council has enough data to be able to make the informed decisions around PCI, and again, our street selection process that staff is working on that piece, but it's putting everything together into one plan for your consideration as well.
Mayor, if I may, I think I see where you're headed. So if I may, part of what we need to be able to do is to have the conversation about adjusting level of service, which is what this boils down to at the end of the day. And as resources are scarce, about how you all make decisions about where to spend dollars or where to spend less dollars. Excuse me, I always get this way the later in the night we go. What we are looking for is to have the data and a strategic plan to be able to help define where and how much we should be spending dollars year over year. And if council wanted to change the level of service, that we know what that looks like and how much it would cost. Because as you were pointing out, resources are scarce. And so we have to be as judicious as possible with the resource that we do have. And right now, I think the team would agree with this statement that we don't have a good sense of what all that is, but we need to. And this is really that foundational work that then we can take, and we won't need to redo the plan overall in 5 years. We just need to update it, and it will be a much shorter process. But in order to tell the community about where are we going to spend resources on based on what we have to have, so that criteria and policy direction in place. And I think that's where, I know in my experience here, we've kind of been all over the place in how much we've put funding into payment management, and we really need to know how to plan year over year what it is that we're planning for, how much, and where does it go, if that helps.
Can you clarify for me how much of the money that this program will impact comes from dedicated capital funds versus transfers from operating? Because operating is where we have our issue. Obviously, we could always use more capital for some of this, but operating is where we have our budget problem.
Sure. So some decisions in the plan could potentially impact some of our operations, right? And so we need to be able to aim for minimum and target PCI. We do work in-house. It's mostly repair work, patching, and pothole repair. So majority of the program is funded through the street fund and the transportation capital fund. Okay. So this plan is essentially, hopefully, setting up the city right for at least 5 to 6 years in the future, along with those funding strategies that would involve hundreds of lane miles and millions of dollars. So it's a good investment in the plan.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, can you go back to the slide that had the bar chart on it with like the different years and the PCIs? There we go. So kind of building on what the mayor was talking about, I guess what what I'm assuming this plan will help us with is if you look at 2017-18 and 2019-2020, we spent a lot of money on pavement management. It clearly paid off. We have a PCI of 86, but did we need to spend that much money in those years? And I realize that they come from different funds, but we're talking about, you know, $200,000 in operations versus $5 million from those other funds. Whereas if we had better policies in place, we might see a steadier spend. We might be able to lower that PCI number without lowering the level of service that the community feels, without necessarily shortening the life of our roads, et cetera. But we could certainly save ourselves some money, because I know that some years, if you look at those numbers, right, we only have, what, $3.5 million in our pavement management, but in those years we spent over $7 million. That can get dicey. So there is a trade-off, and I hear what you're saying about the operations, but it's sort of like if we plan better, we might save more money. And sometimes, not necessarily in this particular case, but in some years, we've had to pull money out of the general fund to cover these costs because we didn't have enough money in the street funds, and that ultimately impacts how much money we have for operations. It doesn't make the ongoing revenues equal to or greater than the ongoing expenses, but it certainly pulls that out of, you know, our savings account. So I know that this has been a topic many times on council and trying to strike that proper balance. And I guess I didn't know enough when we had those discussions when I was first on council to understand that maybe if we had some policies in place, we wouldn't have had those debates, and maybe we wouldn't have spent quite that much money in those years, and we could sort of level it off. It also, I think, is really important when we look at it, because even just doing the overlays block streets, and that tends to make our folks in the community not happy. So also being able to level out the work and sort of spread it out more evenly year over year, I would like to see us be able to do that, both from a cost and from a, you know, sort of road closure perspective. But I do hear what you're saying is, like, we keep doing this. We also are a contract city, and we don't have enough staff to do all of our projects, right? Other cities, you won't see this much in contract spend because they have a much larger base of FTEs. And so while we don't see the $120,000 every time we have a project, much of our salaries come out of our operations spending as well. So there would be a trade-off, right? Like, we could hire another person and not have to do this contract, but then we'd have another FTE on board. So I do hear what you're saying, and I do think we should be careful, but this is one of those where when I look at these numbers and I see us spending $7-8 million a year, then I see us only spending $2 million in a year, and now we're going to spend in a budget cycle, then we're going to have $3.5 million. Like, we're kind of all over the map, and is that really, maybe that was genius, I don't know, but it feels like it was a little haphazard.
Yeah, we'd really like to have a 5 or 6 year plan. If you recall one of the slides that had all the other programs that are associated with pavement management, we have to be able to plan those programs as well. Like we mentioned, our pipe condition assessment program and different things, but we need to know what roads we're planning to overlay about 5 years out so we can start those contracts and those programs going too.
Because it does feel like, I mean, I don't know if 70 wants to be our goal, but 86 does feel a little bit high, given what other cities have. And I think you were looking for, like, figuring out a range. Like, there should be, like, don't ever drop below number, but there should be, like, a range so that you guys, again, can make decisions based on, oh, we have another project going on. So it's not yet at 70, but given the other things we have to do, it's in the range, so it's okay to go ahead and dig that up type of thing, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we've had a lot of these conversations in the past. Not even before your time, Audrey. It's just been such an exciting topic.
Any other questions? Okay, is there a motion? The motion would be to approve the 2026 pavement condition survey and management plan.
Second.
Who moved?
Oh, I thought you were moving.
No, I was stating the motion. Someone can say.
Oh, I thought you were
Nope.
making the motion.
Asking for.
So moved.
It's been moved.
Second.
It's been seconded. Discussion. Okay. Yes.
I'm just going to, I'm going to have to vote no on this one, and it's it's really, I don't see how having matrices and complicated criteria and rating for a road is going to satisfy somebody who has a pothole in front of their street that hasn't been fixed yet. I don't think it. I actually think it will be offensive. It's like, well, our policy is we've got this fancy program and it says this is a lower priority. As a resident, I wouldn't be happy to hear that. And so I think there's not enough judgment built in, and maybe we can build that in ultimately, but right now I'm just not comfortable continuing down the path of having these strict criteria around how a road can be maintained. I'm just not comfortable with it.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, Deputy Mayor, that's a really great point. I do think, and maybe this is more of a question, is that the bulk of this policy is still around setting the range of the PCI. Those other factors would come in, when we're in the range in terms of prioritizing which ones we do first. It's not saying if you have a pothole, we're not going to fix it because we're going to go do this other thing first. It's like we have 10 roads we have to do. What's the order we're going to do them in? But getting that PCI number, at least for me, doing this work to find the appropriate range of PCI numbers is where we find the sweet spot of huge dollar savings. And while I do want to be focused on the operations budget, I do want to be focused overall on our total tax dollars of finding that sweet spot and being really smart about when we do the overlays and when we do certain types of preservation work to extend the life of our roads and not to do it too early, but not to do it too late, again, can save us tens of millions of dollars over just a few years. And so to me, that is the important part of this, and that other matrix is just to help prioritize when you're in the range. It's not saying, oh, we're going to go do this. It's not really ready, but this matrix tells us that. Am I wrong on that understanding?
No, you're correct. The PCI data would be the piece we look at first. If that particular road or stretch of road they're broken up into over 2,500 different sections. But if that particular stretch of road does not need maintenance in the 5 or 6 year window, other than something that we would handle in-house, then we wouldn't apply the criticality matrix or anything else to that road. It's good. We'll circle back in the next 5-year pavement condition assessment. That would just be simply a minor update to this plan.
Yeah, I think the big part for me, the big part of the policy is having that policy of what is the range of PCI so that we can plan better and hopefully smooth out the work and the spend on that. Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Lamb.
Yeah, I support this. We need to know what the PCI level should be so that we are not overspending on repaving. In the last time you guys came for a presentation, I remember wanting a better understanding of the differences in the PCI levels, like what is a 70, what does it feel like to drive on a 70, because 70 seems to be the norm. So I'd like to get an understanding of that sometime in the future to be able to see a road. So
we would be more than happy to. Just the last overlay a few years ago at 228th, the PCI was a 57, just if that helps.
Councilmember Boyer.
Yeah, thanks, you guys. So what we're motioning and voting on is 121,000, not the policy. Is that true? So therefore, we're looking at getting data, and then from there, we're going to proceed with our policy decisions. Is an 86 good, and how we're going to spend it, and matrix, and all that, right?
Correct.
Got it. One other thing, the bar chart that I found interesting, because you know how long roads last, when they were built, all of them. Do you predict costs going forward?
Definitely, there's been inflation costs. We have a few roads in the city that have some interesting repair history as well. Yeah. Some of them may or may not have the base in place that we would have for as we're building a road from scratch today. So those are all things that we consider when we look at that road and what the methodology for treatment is.
Those are in the assessment.
Those are just honestly things that staff knowledge over time.
Because I suspect later roads are probably better than old roads. Is that true?
Newer roads are built to different standards. They have
Standards,
different
yeah,
requirements for sub-base and their base. Some older roads, just, that wasn't a requirement then.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mayor. Audrey, this is a really important project. I think the quality of our roads is probably, for a lot of people, the only time they interact with the city, when they're driving over a road, and if the road doesn't feel good and they pay a lot of property tax, they kind of wonder what the heck's going on. So I think this is very important. And to the Deputy Mayor's point, if somebody on their local street is seeing a pothole or two or three, what is it that they do?
Hopefully they submit a request in My Sammamish, and our crews are usually out there within a few days.
Right. And those are the kinds of things we fix in-house.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Treen.
All right, so the reason why I asked for the 80,000, what did we get for it already? So is staff unable at this point to be doing the analyzing of that? Our traffic engineers or the people who are on staff now have the ability to look at pictures and drive the city and know what the condition of the road is?
No, this is very specialized technology. That there's a picture in one of the slides of the truck that scans the road. It sees microscopic distresses in the roads and compounds things really to national standards with the scoring index. Almost every city uses this. I don't know anyone in-house that does their own road survey work.
Okay, I know that the survey work has been done. Is that true? That's what I asked. That was my initial question. For 80,000, we got the survey work done.
The data collection has been complete. My understanding is the consultants are QA/QCing that final data and putting it into packages for us.
And then what can we do with those packages?
They take those numbers and they run models in the software, and we need to set up the new software system. It's called Pavement Express. That'll talk to our asset management system. So that needs to be imported into that system, and then the models, different funding scenarios can be run.
And then it also will then download into our GIS program that's here in the city?
The data is collected in GIS, and then there's I think it's a one-way sync between GIS and the Pavement Express, and then I'm not quite sure how the two Trimble-owned companies, those software pieces, talk to each other. But traditionally, it's a one-way sync from GIS to whatever software we're using, so we have a little bit more data management control. But yes, they will talk to each other.
So that's what we're paying for?
For this first piece that was done in the fall.
For 110,000?
For remaining work is the final QA/QC, drafting the plan, the consultant to run those scenarios so that we can have the data to present to council as they're making policy decisions regarding PCI and other decisions that we'll need for the plan.
Yeah, because it's not about potholes. This is about the road conditions and what needs to be overlaid. So the last question I have, because I'm still debating whether I want to vote for this or not. So reconstruction. Roads has nothing to do with this particular part of it. Instead, that's a decision, that's part of the policy-making decision that we'll make and how we're going to spend the money.
Whether a road needs to be reconstructed is dependent on its pavement condition index score. There's only certain things that we can do within certain scoring ranges. It just won't work. We can't overlay a road once it has a score of 35
yeah, I understand
type of thing.
So this, by spending this money, that's what I'm going to find out. That's what staff's going to find out, is that, okay, this road has reached the level that it needs to be reconstructed, or this one can do an overlay, this one can do chip seal, this one can do just a sealant, you know. Yeah.
And there's also a lot of new technologies that we'd like to incorporate into this plan. There's micro seals, slurry seals, and different fibers we can mix into the hot mix asphalt as we're doing the overlay that we'd like to consider and propose as part of this plan. At the end of the day, would save money.
Yeah, because I could save money on that for sure. Okay, thanks.
Okay, I think all the council members have gone. I'll speak to what I'm thinking, and then I'll come to you council members to do it. So if I was starting originally with this plan, I wouldn't support it. I think that we're in a budget position where we need to start looking at what is good enough. And I think our prior program was good enough. We had really good roads, and maybe the decisions weren't exactly perfect, but they were they were fine. And now we're spending a ton of money on studies, and in money, we literally don't have the money. And we're spending a ton of money on studies to get to what I think is the ideal or the perfect, and I think we need to start looking at what can we get by with. So if I were asked, am I going to support this before this project kicked off, I would say no. The sunk cost fallacy and all that, we're going to get good data from it. I think we'll be able to make good decisions. I'm going to support the motion, but how I think about this going forward is we need to start looking more closely at good enough and not ideal or perfect, because I think we're indexing too highly on ideal. Councilmember Stewart.
No, Michael, when he asked his question, I'm not sure I understood the answer. So the 121,000 won't just be data. It will also be some of these, the policies that would be proposed from the data around, like, what is the right PCI index range for us to do the various types of things and to assess with the new technologies what types of repair or preservation work can be done. And again, I appreciate that we're in a budget crunch, but again, I see spending $120,000 now to potentially save millions of dollars in unnecessary repaving when something else might work, or doing it too early. And then, you don't think that's a big deal if you do it too early, but if you do it 2 years too early over a 20-year period, you may end up doing it 2 or 3 times that you didn't have to. So again, we've spent a lot of money on road maintenance and preservation in our budget cycles. And again, some years it's been, $7 or $8 million. So I appreciate the focus and making sure we're not spending unnecessarily, but I feel like this is one of those, like, good planning, what is it, a penny saved and a pound earned or whatever, right? Like, proper planning prevents, unnecessary spending later. So I appreciate this. And I'll be supporting this. Thanks.
Just to make sure I understand, we are the 121,000, who's making those policy decisions?
No, it's not a decision. It would be recommendations. And we make the decisions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will be back to council a lot. If the contract is authorized tonight, we'll be back to council quite a bit this spring, and we'll be asking to make a series of policy decisions that will be incorporated into the draft plan, which will also be presented and reviewed by council.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, that's.
Thanks. I appreciate the conversation on the council. That's very helpful. The part that I object to is the description of the policies that are coming back to us and that we're paying somebody to help us make those policy decisions. It's not just getting data. In that part, I think having an assessment of our roads and the stage of repair that they're in is important. That part I support, and the integration with our systems, I think that's fantastic. I just don't think we need them to give us policy guidance. That's all.
So,
and I'm not, what I hear about the policy direction that's already been discussed, I'm not sure I support.
If I may clarify, this would be staff providing recommendations to council for policy decisions. What we need the consultant to support us on is running different scenarios. So if council decides they would like to have a 70 minimum and a 75 maximum or target PCI citywide, and then further breaks that down into arterials and local roads, we need to be able to run a lot of different scenarios in the models so that we can come back to you with some price tags associated with all of those different implementation plans, if you will. So the policy decisions were staff recommendations is what we would like to have in place from council so that we can move forward with the program.
Thanks for the clarification.
Okay, if there's no other discussion, we'll move to a vote. So all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be back throughout the spring. Thank you.
Thank you for the time, and I wasn't talking to you specifically when I was, but I was looking at you, but thank you so much.
Here we are. Yeah.
Okay, up next, we have the external committee appointments. Who, is Mike Sugg here? Will someone else be presenting on that?
Presenting might be a strong word, Mayor, but if you'll bear with me, Rachel can come up. Mike was not feeling well, so he was not joining us.
Yeah, sorry, Scott, you are not a good substitute for Mike. I'm so sorry.
I don't carry the same cachet. I'm well aware. But we're going to pinch hit, so bear with us here.
For the record, no one is a good substitute for Mike Sugg, let's be clear. So, also for the record, Rachel Bianchi, Deputy City Manager. So, Council, before you tonight, you have a series of committees that different council members serve on. I think they're technically called mayoral appointments. But we did go ahead and thank you to all of you for filling out the form. It made it a lot easier for us to understand sort of where the interest is. Mayor Amato, Deputy Mayor Treen, Mike did send earlier today to the three of us the second spreadsheet that has all the information about who is interested in what. So if it makes sense, I can just walk through each appointment and see where things are.
Yes, I think that'll be helpful for everyone.
Okay, great. So the first one is for a Regional Coalition for Housing Liaison, or ARCH. This one is, some of these are standing committees. They meet, every week, every 2 weeks, that sort of thing. Some of these are more ad hoc and as needed. The ARCH one is more of an as needed. Although David does inform me that they are planning to do more work with their elected officials this year. So those of you who put your name on it, you may have a little more work. We have one main position and one alternate, which is what we're looking for here today. I'm glad we started with this one because we have one council member interested in serving and one council member interested in staying on as the alternate.
Are you going to keep that a mystery from us? Or
Sorry.
are we just going to guess?
Yes, okay. You're each going to go put a dot. No. So Deputy Mayor Treen has volunteered to serve as the main member, and Councilmember Lamb has requested to continue to serve as the alternate.
Are we going to do these one at a time, or are we going to batch them up in one vote?
I might suggest you do them one at a time, just for clarity, for our friends over in the clerk's office.
Got you. Okay, so do we just, I think.
Head nods is sufficient for this, yes, absolutely.
Okay, is there any, we're all happy
Or
with?
you could just do are there any objections?
That's a great idea. Any objections to having Deputy Mayor as the member and Councilmember Lamb as the alternate for ARCH? Great. On to the next one.
Okay, next one is Eastside Fire and Rescue Boards of Directors. You have two members and one alternate. All total, you have three council members interested. That they include Mayor Amato, Councilmember Stewart, who is currently serving in this role, and Councilmember Kent Treen. And again, you have two members and one alternate for this position.
So what I've marked here is that Councilmember Stewart would maintain member status, Kent Treen would move in as a member, and I would come in as an alternate for that. So any objections to that? Okay.
On this next one, if I may, the Eastside Fire and Rescue Board decides who serves on the Finance and Administrative Committee. So we wouldn't decide that. It would be from the folks who are serving.
From those.
Yeah, so it would be like you or me.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't, like we don't get to decide.
We don't get to decide on this one.
Right, yeah, they do, yeah. The board does, yeah. Sorry. I thought I'd said that to Mike, but I don't know if I did.
You did.
Thank you. We'll move on to Eastside Transportation Partnership, or ETP. This one we need two members and one alternate, and you have two members. So Mayor Amato and Councilmember Boyer have both volunteered to serve on this committee.
Would anyone like to jump in as an alternate for this committee? ETP.
So Councilmember Stewart's willing to be an alternate?
Okay, we'll have Councilmember Stewart on as an alternate. Okay, any objections? All right, on to the next one.
K4C elected official work group. We have 2 members needed, and we have 2 returning council members who've been serving on this committee and would like to continue to do so, which would be council members O'Farrell and Stewart.
Any objections?
I dare you.
Perfect. All right, on to Salmon Recovery Council.
Salmon Recovery, otherwise known as the Water Resource.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kokanee Work Group.
Kokanee Work Group, sorry. Kokanee Work Group, we have 1 member, 1 alternate. Similarly, we have 2 who are interested in serving. We have Deputy Mayor Treen, and we have Councilmember Treen, who are interested in serving. And that you only have 1 member and 1 alternate, so someone's going to have to make a decision.
We have Deputy Mayor in as alternate here, and then Councilmember Treen would continue on as member.
I think you're supposed to see if there's any objections.
Any objections?
I'm the chair at this one, so I'd like to continue to be the chair of the Kokanee Work Group and now ILA. No objection.
All right, we can move to the next one now.
Salmon Recovery Council, otherwise known as the Water Resource Inventory Area, you have 1 member and 1 alternate needed. You have Deputy Mayor Treen has requested to serve, Councilmember O'Farrell, who is the incumbent in this role, and Councilmember Treen are all 3. And again, you're looking for 1 member and 1 alternate.
So I spoke with Deputy Mayor before the meeting, and she's fine dropping off of this one. And so it'd be Councilmember O'Farrell in as the member and Kent Treen in as the alternate. Any objections?
Great.
Goes without saying.
SCA or Sound Cities Association Public Issues Committee, you're looking for 1 member and 1 alternate. You do have 4 council members interested. Mayor Amato, Deputy Mayor Treen, Councilmember Lamb, who currently serves as the alternate and would like to remain as the SCA pick alternate, and then Councilmember Treen.
So Deputy Mayor and I worked together. We looked at Deputy Mayor moving to member and myself moving to alternate. Any objections? No
Okay,
objections?
and finally is the YMCA Advisory Board. You need 1 member. You have 3 interested. Deputy Mayor Treen, Councilmember O'Farrell, and Councilmember Stewart.
I'm fine from stepping away from that.
How many, I think I'm on 1 and I'm an alternate for 1. No, I'm on 2, sorry, I'm on 2.
You
and
are
I'm
on-
an alternate for 1. How many are you on, Deputy Mayor?
Right now, I think I'm on 3.
It's-
Probably shouldn't take a 4th.
It's Councilmember O'Farrell who's up against you for we're talking about the YMCA board?
Oh, is it just 1 member?
It's just 1 member on the YMCA board.
Did you want to keep it?
Oh, I'm not currently on it.
Or did you want to be on it then? So,
But if you would like to do it.
no, I already have 2 and 1, and Deputy Mayor has 3, so I don't know how many you have.
Yeah, no, the Y sounds good to me. I can do
Okay, I'm good with that.
Okay, so Councilmember O'Farrell will do the YMCA board. Any objections? Okay, next.
So moving on, the mayor has requested that there are liaisons to the school districts and the water and sewer districts in town. So up to, I believe, maybe I'll go with up to 2 members each. First is the Lake Washington School District, where you have 1 council member interested. That's Councilmember Stewart.
Would anyone else like to opt into that?
You're just going to push me right out, aren't you?
No, it's 2 members. 2 members. So would anyone else like to join you in that work?
Perhaps maybe we go through all of them, and then when there may be some leftovers, if I could offer that
That's
folks may change their mind.
Great way to do it.
So for Issaquah School District, we do have 4 council members interested. Councilmember Amato, Councilmember Boyer, Councilmember Lamb, and Councilmember O'Farrell. And again, looking for 2 members.
So I had marked Councilmember Boyer and O'Farrell in to take those, and then I would drop, and of course, Councilmember Lamb would have to also agree.
I don't have any committees right now.
You, Arch.
I'm an alternate. I'd like to remain on ISD.
I'd support that.
Okay, is there anyone who would, between, I'm already dropping, so it'd be between Boyer and O'Farrell, either one of you interested in dropping to put Councilmember Lamb in place for liaison to Issaquah?
I thought it needed 2.
Yeah, so that would, right now, the 2 I mentioned were Boyer and O'Farrell.
Okay.
And Councilmember Lamb, if you were to do it, we would need to drop one person from it.
I can drop.
Okay.
Because I'm sure Roisin will share.
She does not, she never shares, no.
Okay. So then for Issaquah, it'll be Councilmember Lamb and O'Farrell.
Great. For Snoqualmie Valley School District, you are looking for 2 members. You have 1 interested, which would be Councilmember Treen. So Sammamish Plateau Water and Sewer, you're looking for 2 members. You have 4 interested. You have Mayor Amato, Deputy Mayor Treen. You have Councilmember Stewart and Councilmember Treen.
I can drop.
Which I just heard Councilmember Stewart say that she would drop out. And also Councilmember Treen, so that would leave the mayor and deputy mayor.
Okay. Any objections? All right.
That's the water district?
That's one of them.
That's one of them. And then Northeast Sammamish Sewer and Water is the second one. You have 2 members that you're looking for, and you have 2 interested. They have rhyming last names. So Deputy Mayor Treen and Councilmember Treen.
I can't work with him.
All right. Any objections to that? Okay.
So that does leave, if there were council members interested in filling other positions, there is 1 more position at Lake Washington School District and 1 more position at Snoqualmie Valley School District if folks are looking to fill their time.
Lake Washington School District? Yeah, come on.
I just don't know that at all.
Lake Washington School District currently only has 1 council member, which is Councilmember Stewart.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm hearing Councilmember Boyer.
So I'm 2 for 2 tonight on coercing him into volunteering for things.
I'm going with 3 because he's on Project Elephant now. So I'm hearing now that there's 2 for district liaisons for the Lake Washington School District. So that would leave, there would be 1 open liaison with the Snoqualmie Valley School District if another council member was interested. It currently has Councilmember Treen on it. It is a very small, there's a very, very small population. That would be completely accurate.
And I work in the district as well. So as a volunteer, part-time, but I've been in the district for 4 years now. So 4 years, yeah.
So you're overqualified?
So I think he's saying he can do it all by himself and doesn't need any
Well, I'm
help.
just saying, if no one else wants to do it, it's this one is going to be easy.
Yep.
Okay.
So
Okay, so Mayor, Council, I think you have all of your appointments.
Awesome work, everybody. Thank you for stepping us through that.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
It was better than guessing, so thank you.
Next time. Thank you.
All right. We are now on to council report.
Executive session.
Thank you. On to executive session.
Mayor, if I may, council and city manager report come ahead of the executive session on the agenda.
It does.
And also, because we are running up on our 10 o'clock time cap, we will need to also prospectively extend the meeting to allow for both of those things to happen.
I move that we extend the meeting to 10:30.
second.
It's been moved and seconded to extend the meeting 10:30. Discussion? None. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, meeting has been extended to 10:30. Okay, and you're saying council reports and city manager reports are coming before is that how you got that? Okay. All right, so on to council reports. Councilmember Lamb.
So I'm going to City Action Days along with you and Deputy Mayor Train and the city manager on Wednesday and Thursday. And I believe we're meeting with 9 legislators and to talk about our legislative priorities.
So, since Mike Suggs is out ill, are you coming with us then?
We will figure out who. Probably you're going to be on Wednesday. You'll be on your own, and then one of us will accompany you on Thursday to the legislative meetings.
Will the consultants be there?
Yeah, our lobbyists are permanently affixed to the Hill during the legislative session, so they're kind of always there.
Okay, any other council reports? All right, city manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a super brief one. Just a reminder that Lunar New Year is coming up at the city's Building 120. We're super excited. It is on Saturday, the 31st, from 1 to 4 at Building 120. And we look forward to seeing the community out for that, which is always a great event.
All right, thank you. Councilmember O'Farrell.
I just wanted to mention that Councilmember Lamb and I were at the Martin Luther King Day of Service at Pine Lake on Monday. I went home with calluses on my hands from pulling ivy, like you would not believe. So we carried out, I'd say, 4 or 5 tarpfuls of ivy alone, not to mention all the other invasive species that we must have gotten rid of out of Pine Lake. But it was very rewarding. It was hugely gratifying to see so many people show up. I think they had over 100 people show up for the event. It's so great to see so many young people motivated to be of service. And also, I suppose it didn't help it wasn't raining. But it was a hugely gratifying experience, and I encourage everybody to sign up for all those kind of events in Sammamish, of which there are many. So, yeah, it was great.
Thank you. Thank you both for attending. Okay, if there's no other reports, we will now go into executive session to discuss with legal counsel potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.1101I. We'll be in there approximately 15 minutes, and council may take action. We will return at 10:17. All right, the council has returned from executive session. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I move to authorize the city manager to sign the administrative settlement with Janet Hammer related to the George Davis Creek Fish Passage and Storm Improvement Project for needed temporary and permanent easements in the amount recommended by the city's right-of-way agent and staff.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, discussion. Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, the motion carries. All right.
Move to adjourn?
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
I wasn't sure if we were there. That's
And while we will be very sad to lose Chief Lane, we're all very excited about Chief Aho and the period ahead. So